Chapter 633. Ning Tianxing really wanted to know how Lin Yuan refined his body. This freak didn't seem to have refined his strength, but his body was as hard as a magic weapon. It was terrifying. According to Ning Tianxing's estimation, even if the punch just now wasn't enough to take Lin Yuan's life, and even if it couldn't penetrate his abdomen, it could at least stir up his internal organs and cause him serious internal injuries. But the result was that Lin Yuan only retreated 3 steps, and even his aura seemed to be non-existent. There wasn't the slightest sign that his aura was in disorder. Body matching technique? In terms of speed, the two were equal. In terms of strength, Ning Tianxing won. But in terms of defense and resistance, Ning Tianxing felt that even if his whole body was broken, he still wouldn't be able to hurt his opponent. Seeing that Lin Yuan was still standing in the same place, but the surface of the Wei River under his feet was slightly rippling, Ning Tianxing's eyes suddenly focused, and he subconsciously retreated 2 steps, looking at Lin Yuan with vigilance. Up until now, both sides had only been probing each other with the exception of the last desperate punch for punch. However, if this battle were to continue, no one would be able to gain much of an advantage. Although he wasn't really afraid of this freak who came out of nowhere, Ning Tianxing didn't want to reveal his trump card in this kind of game like clearing a level. Not to mention facing an existence whose ability to control water was not weaker than his own, and who could also rely on some kind of special power to interfere with him. Even if he revealed 1 or 2 trump cards, he might not be able to win. He had to go all out. My name is Ning Tianxing. What's your name? Ning Tianxing gently waved his hand, and used his other hand to cover his nose that was constantly bleeding, and said helplessly, I'm afraid of you. You just want to borrow a path. Don't tell me you really want to fight me to the death? Lin Yuan. Seeing Ning Tianxing retreat, Lin Yuan also withdrew the demonic power he was mobilizing, and let out a long breath. The body of a puppet was rootless. Although it couldn't display its full strength after being refined by him, it could use the skills of the system. Obviously, Lin Yuan couldn't take advantage of it all. The power of the skills couldn't be displayed by half, but the consumption was doubled. And all the demonic power was directly extracted from Lin Yuan's body by the system. Even if he had the method to increase his demonic power by visualizing the star concealment diagram, and the additional demonic power from the transaction of Joss flames, he couldn't rely on the body of a puppet to fight a high-intensity war of attrition. If Ning Tianxing was as stupid and stubborn as the rumors said, he would sooner or later reveal his true form, and then bring some unnecessary trouble. But even so, Lin Yuan wasn't afraid of fighting. Even if other forces took advantage of him during the time he went to the West Sea Dragon Palace, it wouldn't destroy his foundation. At worst, he could take revenge on them one by one in the future. Lin Yuan didn't want to reveal his true form, because he didn't think it was necessary. But Ning Tianxing was also a demonic beast. If the intensity of the battle was too high, he would most likely reveal his true form, or use demonic power to fight with Lin Yuan. If he revealed his demonic power in front of the elites of the victorious army, Ning Tianxing wouldn't have a foothold in the Azure River Empire in the future. So when Lin Yuan planned to continue the battle, Ning Tianxing took the initiative to retreat, indicating that he didn't want to continue being an enemy. I'm very interested in you. Can you tell me how you interfered with my control of the Wei River? Ning Tianxing slowly put down his hand that was covering his nose. His nose that was broken by Lin Yuan had completely healed, and he returned to his appearance when he got off the boat. It was as if the battle just now didn't happen at all. Then can you tell me how you managed to transform? Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he asked with a faint smile. As his voice fell, both of them fell silent. Transforming into a demonic beast was Ning Tianxing's biggest taboo. Although there were rumors that he was a demonic beast, it was just that he accidentally revealed his demonic aura when he was ignorant. After that, he and Zhao Xiang cleaned up all the loose ends. Those who had evidence had already been killed. So what was circulating was just a rumor. Not many people had evidence that he was a demonic beast. And Zhao Xiang, who knew his identity, had to rely on Ning Tianxing, this evil dragon, to protect the Azure River Empire after he died. So he wouldn't say a word to the outside world. So far, Ning Tianxing was undoubtedly very safe. Even if someone like Lin Yuan knew his identity, it was useless. Even if an outsider said it, how many people would believe it? The royal family of the Azure River Empire had probably communicated with Zhao Xiang long ago, and also knew his identity. It was just that before a new guardian appeared in the Azure River Empire, and had enough confidence to deal with him, the royal family would definitely not do anything to him. Instead, they would strictly protect his identity. But this was still his taboo. Although it wasn't to the extent of exploding on the spot, Ning Tianxing quickly realized that the ability to control other people's water was also a secret to Lin Yuan that wasn't inferior to his transformation. If he wanted to know the origin and cultivation method of this ability, he had to tell Lin Yuan an equivalent secret. Then forget it. Ning Tianxing looked at Lin Yuan with vigilance. Lin Yuan shook his head and interrupted Ning Tianxing's excuse. He smiled and said, "I don't think I will just let it go like this. Sooner or later, I will know the secret of your transformation. Do you believe me?" Ning Tianxing was silent for a moment, and slowly raised his middle finger at Lin Yuan. He said coldly, "If that day really comes, it means that the Azure River Empire will be flattened by you, boss. I know you are from the northern frontier, but don't tell me you think that Black Jiao has the ability to take down the Azure River Empire?" "Why not?" Lin Yuan shrugged and didn't comment on Ning Tianxing's opinion. He even had a hint of mockery. The Black Jiao wants the Azure River Empire's territory. Sure, let his northern frontier king send troops to fight. If those Northland barbarians can defeat old Zhao's victorious army, not to mention my secret, I can even tell you the secret of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ning Tianxing obviously didn't intend to continue hiding his identity from Lin Yuan, who had seen through his identity. He even vaguely pointed out his relationship with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Only then did he look at Lin Yuan with a faint smile. This guy from the northern frontier obviously wanted to go out to sea. Now that he had offended the members of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas before he even reached the sea, he would suffer when he went out to sea. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan's face was still as calm as before. He wasn't scared by Ning Tianxing at all. It seemed that he couldn't even cooperate with him to make a surprised and fearful expression to satisfy Ning Tianxing's bad taste. "Shall we make a bet?" Lin Yuan shrugged his shoulders, raised his eyebrows and asked. Chapter 634. Bet. Interesting. Tell me, how do you want to bet? Lin Yuan wasn't frightened. Instead, Ning Tianxing's curiosity was piqued by Lin Yuan, and he asked excitedly. Due to his ferocious personality, Ning Tianxing's existence was very important to the Azure River Empire. Hence, his status was very high. However, there weren't many who were willing to make friends with him. Most of them didn't even have the guts to joke with him, let alone bet with him. "I will bet with you. Within half a year, cross the northern frontier and flatten the Azure River Navy. If I lose, I will tell you what my ability is. If you lose, other than the secret of your transformation, I want you to work for me." Lin Yuan spoke very quickly, but his tone was resolute as if there was no room for doubt. Such words might sound like a loss to others, but to Ning Tianxing, a great demon who could control the Wei River, it was rather attractive. After all, it was like Zhao Xiang's status in the Azure River Empire. Although he was respected, he didn't lack challengers. Ning Tianxing's status in the Wei River was the same. Although most of the demonic beasts didn't dare to compete with him, there were still plenty of demonic beasts who didn't listen to his orders. Even the flood dragons from the endless sea coveted his position. There were more challengers than Zhao Xiang. If it wasn't for his transformation, he would have been chased to other places to make a living. However, if he had Lin Yuan's ability to interfere with others' control of water, his status in the Wei River would be completely stabilized. Even the dragon race from the endless sea might not be able to threaten his position. Sure. Ning Tianxing nodded. There wasn't much expression on his face, but there was obvious excitement in his eyes. Previously, he didn't dare to confirm Lin Yuan's identity. However, according to the news that came back, a vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor obviously didn't have the guts and ability to subdue a famous general of the Azure River Empire. Moreover, Lin Yuan had already seen through his disguise as a demonic beast. Unless the uncrowned king of the northern frontier personally came out. In addition, he had smelled the scent of his own kind from Lin Yuan's body, as well as the faintly discernible demonic energy when the two of them fought. Coupled with Lin Yuan's question about his transformation, all of this had exposed Lin Yuan's identity. If Ning Tian was the role model of the younger generation of water generals in the Qingjiang dynasty, in that case Lin Yuan, who took advantage of the chaos as a demon beast to rise to prominence and become a dominant figure, vaguely showing signs of annexing the Shenwu dynasty, was undoubtedly the role model in the hearts of all demon beasts. However, just like how Lin Yuan wouldn't reveal his identity as a demonic beast, he wouldn't be stupid enough to reveal Lin Yuan's identity. On the surface, he was a water general of the Qingjiang dynasty, but secretly, he was a spy planted by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. How could he not know that Lin Yuan went south because of the invitation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Even the little princess of the West Sea Dragon Palace stayed in the northern frontier for a period of time. If he revealed Lin Yuan's true identity now, then Lin Yuan would have enough reason to return to the northern frontier and ignore the invitation of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan's side was fine. At most, the West Sea Dragon Palace would continue to torture him. If he ruined the plans of the West Sea Dragon Palace, the dragon race in the Endless Sea would definitely not mind tearing him apart or sinking him to the bottom of the Endless Sea to be classified as a sin dragon. I've already spoken to my subordinates. They said that if I can't stop you, then there's no need to stop you in the later stages. Ning Tianxing stretched his body and said with a smile, "It's about time to finish clearing all the stages. If you can get past Old Man Zhao, then everything will be peaceful. Otherwise, you can only take the land route and return to the sea with your true form." As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Tianxing waved his hand and walked back to his ship with a nonchalant expression. The previous battle was very fast, and both parties did not use their full strength. Hence, it looked like they were evenly matched. However, if Ning Tianxing returned to his ship like this, it meant that he admitted that he had lost to Lin Yuan. Including him, all the previous stages of Zhao Xiang would choose to let him pass, and not continue to stop Lin Yuan from clearing the stage. After all, Zhao Xiang was old. The Qingjiang dynasty would not disrespect Ning Tianxing. However, to Ning Tianxing, who had never been defeated before, it was undoubtedly a huge blow. Even those competitors who no longer coveted his position as the next general of the victorious army would have their ambitions reignited. After taking a few steps, Ning Tianxing turned back and said, "As for the transfiguration method, although I can't tell you directly, I can reveal some information to you. Before I transfigured, I was the Dragon King of an area along the coast of the Qingjiang dynasty." Speaking of this, Ning Tianxing paused again. A touch of shame appeared on his face, and he said in a low voice, "But I'm not the real Dragon King. You know that the people along the coast and river always like to call some aquatic monsters the Dragon King. F***CK, they don't care about the reputation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas at all. Of course, the Dragon King won't settle accounts with them, but he will definitely deal with us." After speaking, he waved his hand and strode away. He had no intention of looking back. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Could the transfiguration method be related to the power of incense? Be it in his previous life or this life, humans seem to be particular about living off the mountains and living off the rivers. There were actually human villages in the Hengduan mountain range, but these villages would consecrate the nearby Beast King as their guardian deity. It wasn't the kind of consecration that would build a temple. Instead, they would regularly hand over meat and fays as tributes in exchange for safety. However, these people who lived near the water really had to take boats to fish. They had to face those ferocious monsters directly. Therefore, they had to be sincere when worshipping the Beast King. Otherwise, they would be using themselves as tributes again, boasting that the other party was the Dragon King, the Water God, and so on were just basic operations. They would often open temples, and even worship during festivals, as if they really treated the other party as a deity. After a long time, if the Beast King that was worshipped could really guarantee their peace, it would naturally develop into true believers to provide them with the power of incense. In his previous life, because of the myths, there were many mountain gods and water gods. However, there were many cultivators in the Sky Martial continent. Although there were legends, in their eyes, the so-called gods were just powerful cultivators. In addition to the land's demonic beasts, there were not many mountain gods. On the contrary, there were many water gods. Ning Tianxing should have been one of them. However, if the transfiguration method was related to the power of incense, how much incense would it take to transfiguration? Previously, when he traded with Lei Qiuxing, 200,000 incense, Lin Yuan did not hear the system prompt that he could transfiguration. Was there a problem with the method Ning Tianxing gave him, or did he not have enough incense at that time? Chapter 635. Lin Yuan couldn't figure out the relationship between shape-shifting and the power of incense, so he could only let out a long sigh. He walked back to his boat and continued towards the estuary. Ning Tianxing didn't have a good reputation in the Qinjiang dynasty, but as a powerful man, he had always been regarded as the successor of the guardian of the Qinjiang dynasty after Zhao Xiang, so his prestige in the army wasn't low. With Ning Tianxing's greeting, the rest of Lin Yuan's journey could be said to be unimpeded. When passing through the remaining checkpoints, the generals just stood at the bow of the ship and glanced curiously at the young man, who could fight with Ning Tianxing on the surface of the Wei River, but did not intend to make a move. The Baixing Navy's boat formation was divided into 5 levels. To pass the checkpoint, one had to pass through these 5 formations. After passing the first 4 checkpoints easily, Lin Yuan saw the 5th checkpoint appear in his sight. He instantly gasped. There were no fighting boats prepared to intercept the boat, nor were there any arrows or stones as he expected. However, there were many ships chained together on the Wei River, occupying almost the entire river. Lin Yuan's sight was filled with the shadows of huge ships and sails. Such a scene was visually shocking. Whoosh! A sharp arrow pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. In almost an instant, the small black dot had already arrived in front of Lin Yuan. The ice shield that easily blocked the first arrow didn't even manage to block it properly. It was torn apart by this small arrow and turned into a pile of ice shards that fell into the Wei River. Buzz! The stone arrowhead hit Lin Yuan's right shoulder. A majestic force rolled in. Lin Yuan, who was standing at the bow, didn't even have time to react before he was pushed to the stern by this force. If he hadn't hooked the boat with his foot in time, this arrow alone would have knocked him off the boat. But even so, the boat that was hooked by Lin Yuan's foot was pushed back thousands of meters, and was almost pushed into the 4th checkpoint. He could vaguely hear the exclamations and laughter of the 4th Navy from time to time. It seemed that someone was betting on whether Lin Yuan could take the second arrow of Marshal Zhao. The defending general of the 4th checkpoint came to a ship near Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "Boy, our Navy's battle isn't the same as the one on land that can be won by morale and ferocity. Even if you have great abilities, you won't be able to use them in the water." The 5th checkpoint was set by Marshal Zhao himself. The condition to pass is very simple. As long as you can take 3 arrows of Marshal Zhao without falling off the boat, you pass. Speaking of this, he paused, as if he wanted to form a good relationship, and added, "According to the usual practice, the Marshal just now wanted to greet you, so he only used 20% of his strength at most. The next 2 arrows are 70% of his strength and 10% of his strength respectively. If you are ready, then row the boat forward. If you feel that you can't handle it, then go back home, lest you become a drowned rat." Although the rules were the same, it wasn't easy. If it was an ordinary Qing River Navy, judging from Lin Yuan's ability to easily pass the 1st checkpoint, not to mention the 5th checkpoint, even the 10th checkpoint wouldn't be able to stop him. But Lin Yuan was facing the victorious army, which was at the level of hell in the game. This was because the last obstacle in the battle against the victorious army was Zhao Xiang's unique archery skill. Calm disturbance. It was said that this was a secret technique that Zhao Xiang had created in his early years when he had made a name for himself. Regardless of how the outside world praised it, in the eyes of the Qinjiang soldiers, only those who could withstand the 3 arrows of petrifying wind were qualified to be called first class. However, after Zhao Xiang had created this secret technique, he had used it frequently. However, only 3 people had been able to withstand it. One was Eunuch Tai of the Xinwu dynasty, one was the leader of the Qing River Navy, and the last one was Ning Tianxing. Over the years, There were countless sons of generals who wanted to join the victorious army as generals. But because the entrance examination of the victorious army was to take the secret skill of calm disturbance, only a few could pass. Although the one who used the bow was only Zhao Xiang's son, there were only a few who could pass the checkpoint. This time, the marshal personally drew the bow, and the power is naturally not comparable to the calm disturbance of the Zhao family's descendant. They saw with their own eyes the effect of forcing Lin Yuan to retreat nearly a kilometer, with only 20% of the power. Got it. Lin Yuan nodded slightly and raised his eyebrows. His opponent's arrow was very fast. Even if Qin Yu used the special bow of the northern frontier, he could not achieve such a fast arrow. But the arrow just now only used 20% of his strength? Just how terrifying was the true strength of this general of the victorious army, whom Lei Qiuxing did not place in his eyes. Lin Yuan always felt that this world seemed to be controlled by the top forces, but the 7 subordinate dynasties did not seem to be soft persimmons. Just like Lei Qiuxing had the shadow beside him, and the Qing River Empire had Zhao Xiang. They all secretly hid extremely terrifying strength. It was just that they had not been forced to the point where they had to explode. Thinking of this, the corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. He murmured, "Let's see how strong your victorious duke is first." Lin Yuan's voice was very soft. Even the general who spoke to him before did not hear him. He only saw Lin Yuan lowering his head and murmuring a few words. Then he steered the boat forward again. Further away, the second arrow of calm disturbance was shot out. The speed of this arrow was more than twice as fast as the previous one. Obviously, as the general said, Zhao Xiang's first arrow was just a greeting to Lin Yuan. Moreover, this arrow was not only extremely fast, but the timing of the shot was also perfect. It was shot right at the moment when Lin Yuan steered the boat forward. From afar, it looked like Lin Yuan was going to receive the arrow himself. In addition to the speed and timing, the angle was also quite tricky. Although there was a rule of not harming people's lives, this arrow went straight for Lin Yuan's lower abdomen. If hit by this arrow, even a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator would lose their ability to resist on the spot, and be pushed off the skiff by the force of the arrow. Lin Yuan tilted his head. His long and narrow eyes narrowed, like a fox eyeing its prey. The greeting arrow just now was not easy to receive. The puppet made of various precious metals mixed with Lin Yuan's scales did not have the best defense in the world. However, any armor made of such materials could be called an invulnerable treasure armor. However, Zhao Xiang's arrow hit the right button. Until now, Lin Yuan could still feel that the joint of the right button had caved in, and was unable to move freely. If such an injury fell on an ordinary person, even a cultivator with a strong constitution would probably lose an arm. Chapter 636. Zhao Xiang had indeed greeted him, but he did not care if the other party could accept his greeting. Lin Yuan did not know if Zhao Xiang had done it on purpose or if he had overestimated his strength, but from the injuries on the puppet's body he could feel Zhao Xiang's strong malice. Even if he did not want to take his life with this arrow, he most likely wanted to cripple one of his hands. After all, it was a fact that he had forced Ning Tianxing to surrender in a one-on-one battle in the field that Ning Tianxing specialized in. As the current marshal of the victorious army, Zhao Xiang naturally did not wish for an existence that could threaten Ning Tianxing to appear in the ambitious northern frontier. Because if that happened, the navy that the Qing River Empire was so proud of could be crushed by the northern frontier at any time. How could they protect their country? If it was an official of another empire or a wanderer of the pugilistic world, Zhao Xiang might have extended an olive branch. However, after knowing that the other party came from the northern territory, a faction that had not been used in the past 2 years since it was a land of desolation, Zhao Xiang knew that the Azure River Empire, which was considered weak even among the 7 empires, would definitely not attract the other party. Then, "I'll return it to you." Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes flashed, and his body rushed forward. He actually jumped up from the boat, and took the initiative to meet the arrow. Lin Yuan's hands were in a strange posture. His movements were almost slow to the extreme, but he seemed to be deducing some kind of truth. However, the arrow, which was countless times faster than Lin Yuan's movements, was constantly rotating and struggling between Lin Yuan's hands. It was constantly rotating around Lin Yuan, who was suspended in the air. Tai Chi, grasping Sparrow's tail. Although the martial technique that he had trained so hard in his previous life was executed in the posture of an ordinary person, it was just some kind of fist technique that was used to strengthen the body. However, the concept of Tai Chi was one of the highest martial techniques that Lin Yuan knew. Whether it was using speed to fight slow, or using strength to break a technique, it was obviously not just a little bit inferior to using 4 tails to pull 1,000 caddies. This fist technique was executed with the extraordinary interest of a cultivator, and the power that it could unleash was not something that an ordinary person could imagine. If it had to be categorized according to the Sky Martial Continent's rankings, Tai Chi Fist would definitely belong to the upper earth grade or lower heaven grade. Furthermore, it was the kind of terrifying martial technique that would not be weak when facing a weak opponent, but would be even stronger when facing a strong opponent. In a situation where there was no absolute difference in strength between the two, Lin Yuan couldn't think of anything that Tai Chi couldn't handle. Furthermore, the experience he had gained over 10 years of training in his previous life, combined with the extraordinary quality of his puppet body, allowed him to unleash the full power of Tai Chi. It was just that his right hand was still a little unnatural, so this grasping the bird's tail couldn't be considered beautiful. The arrow circled around Lin Yuan 4 times, like a tamed beast, humming to express its submission. Only then did Lin Yuan slowly push it out with the Taiji stance. Suddenly, it burst out with a speed even more terrifying than before, heading straight for Zhao Xiang, who was at the bow of the ship. Tisk! The corner of Zhao Xiang's mouth twitched slightly, and he suddenly released the large bow that was fully drawn. The third arrow left the bowstring, but its target was no longer Lin Yuan, but the second arrow that was flying back. The 2 arrows collided in midair, and it was as if 2 peerless experts were attacking each other with all their strength on the Wei River. The arrow, which was made of ordinary material, instantly exploded into fine powder, and the aftershock of the explosion spread out in all directions. Both sides were affected at the same time, but Lin Yuan was only pushed back to his own small boat by the shockwave, taking 3 steps back. Every step he took caused the surrounding river to ripple, as if there were thunder exploding in the water, continuously producing muffled sounds. On the other hand, on Zhao Xiang's side, the situation was obviously not as ideal as Lin Yuan's. Zhao Xiang, who had drawn his bow, was unmoved. When the powerful shockwave hit him, his face sank, and he took a firm horse stance, stabilizing his figure and the ship he was on. However, the other ships were not so lucky. They were all pushed back by the terrifying shockwave, and the victorious 100 army soldiers on the edge of the ship fell into the Wei River one after another like dumplings. They were swept into the rolling river before they could even call for help. The victorious 100 army soldiers who had withstood the shockwave with great difficulty didn't even have time to count their losses before they shouted and put down their lifeboats, rowing the boats to save their comrades who had fallen into the water. When all the chaos finally subsided, someone cried out in surprise, expressing disbelief at what had just happened. The iron chain connecting the ship to the river seemed to be unable to withstand the powerful impact, and broke almost instantly. The other ships that had lost the iron chain were also pushed back by the impact. Except for the ship that Zhao Xiang was on, the other ships were all pushed back by more than 100 meters. If there was a comparison, it was undoubtedly more exaggerated that Zhao Xiang's arrow had forced Lin Yuan back by 1,000 meters. However, in terms of the actual effect, it was clear which ship was more important when compared to the hundreds of ships, especially the ship that Zhao Xiang was on. It stood majestically in the same place, forming a sharp contrast with the other ships that were retreating. This made many soldiers of the victorious 100 army feel a burning sensation on their faces. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that in the previous battle, it was obvious that the evil young man with a background had won. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Zhao Xiang, who was standing at the bow of the ship, withdrew his posture. His face was gloomy as he spat out these words one by one. Soon after, he waved his hand and walked directly to the cabin of the ship without looking at Lin Yuan's next move. When there was no one around, Zhao Xiang's face paled. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body swayed as if he would fall down at any moment. In the previous round of confrontation, he had indeed lost. However, he didn't lose in terms of strength, but in his haste to make a move that caused him to suffer a loss. Calm Disturbance was not a game of 20% strength, 70% strength, or 10% strength. Instead, it was similar to the technique of those cavalry generals. Each arrow was steadier and more powerful than the last. The third arrow was already an arrow that far exceeded his strength. However, in order to shoot this arrow, he needed to have enough time to accumulate strength. Contrary to his expectations, Lin Yuan was not forced back by the second arrow. Instead, he used an evil method to shoot the second arrow back. This forced him to hastily shoot the third arrow. The moment he let go, he suffered a backlash from the secret technique and suffered heavy injuries. If not for his vigorous cultivation, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. He would have collapsed to the ground, dead on the spot, and would have to recuperate for a long time. However, the situation was urgent. Naturally, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Others didn't know how terrifying his second arrow was, but how could he not know? If he left it alone, this ship would probably collapse in an instant. Apart from himself, there wouldn't be a second person on the ship that would survive. Therefore, he had no choice but to take action despite the backlash. Chapter 637. If Lin Yuan was just an unaffiliated martial artist, he wouldn't have had to take this arrow and watch as the other party slaughtered the soldiers on the ship. Then, he could point out that the other party had broken the rules of clearing the level and directly detain Lin Yuan. Whether he was locked up in the Azure River Empire or killed on the spot, there wouldn't be any problems. However, Lin Yuan wasn't a lone wolf. Behind him stood the northern frontier, which even the top forces had to be wary of. Not to mention the identity of this brat in the northern frontier. The fact that he was able to be released by the Black Jiao when the Sky Demon Army was about to attack the northern frontier was enough to prove that this brat was under the orders of the Black Jiao. For a hidden danger that could threaten the Azure River Empire, would he provoke the true hidden danger and lead the troops of the northern frontier to the Azure River Empire? Naturally, Zhao Xiang knew how to answer such a simple multiple-choice question. Therefore, he chose to use his own hands as the price to settle this matter. It could also be considered as paying the price for his evil thoughts when he wanted to kill this talent from the northern frontier. After Zhao Xiang left, the rest of the victorious army naturally would not offend Lin Yuan, without Zhao Xiang's permission out of fear. The helmsman controlled the ships and made way for Lin Yuan to pass through a waterway that was large enough for the skiff to pass through. I hope that the next time I come back, you can still maintain your current spirit. When passing by Zhao Xiang's ship, Lin Yuan lightly knocked on the ship's wall with a sinister smile on his face. Who was the best spy in the world? The people from the 7 empires might have different opinions, but to Lin Yuan, this question wasn't worth thinking about. Even if it was Yi Busho and the embroidered uniform guards selected by the system, they could only stand at the top of the food chain of spies in this world, and they weren't the only ones. The most powerful spies would always be those invisible and formless heavenly demons. When they weren't bound by their physical bodies, although they couldn't affect anything, they could use the identity of a bystander to witness everything that happened in any corner of the world. No matter how tight the seal was, it couldn't stop the invisible sky demon. The victorious army couldn't see it, but that didn't mean that Lin Yuan couldn't see it. When he took the ship south, there were countless sky demon following behind his ship. Therefore, everything that happened here was clearly seen by the sky demons. Ordinary soldiers didn't know that Zhao Xiang was injured, but Lin Yuan and the Sky Demon knew. Soon, the Sky Demon army was like a shark that smelled blood, crazily converging towards the south. Because their current strength wasn't enough to compete with the northern frontier, they needed more physical bodies to release more companions to increase their combat strength. Under the situation that the northern frontier couldn't be breached, and they couldn't leave the Shimwu dynasty's territory, the rebel army in the south was naturally the best choice. In the past, the rebel army in the south had the support of the victorious army and the Qinjiang Navy, so it was naturally more than enough to resist the Sky Demon. But now, Zhao Xiang was injured, and the victorious army's morale was affected. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even if the Qinjiang dynasty wouldn't shrink their defense line and defend their territory, They definitely wouldn't be able to support the rebel army in the south as much as before. Those who planned before taking action were not necessarily wise, but those who rationally analyzed the current situation and led the situation in a direction that was beneficial to them were definitely worthy of being called wise. On the other side, Ning Tianqing put his hands behind his back, and the red bell at his waist gently shook. The incorporeal sky demon were like small fish that were sucked into a whirlpool without any resistance. They were easily sucked into the sound of the bell and became absent-minded, slowly gathering towards Ning Tianqing. The victorious army behind Ning Tianqing hurriedly followed Ning Tianqing's instructions, stuffing the sky demon into the magic sealing bottle one by one, waiting for Ning Tianqing's next command. That guy, is he really not a sky demon? Ning Tianqing's eyes narrowed slightly, and his hands kept pointing at the areas where the sky demon was as he muttered to himself. Previously, Lin Yuan's demonic aura was covering up, so he couldn't sense the sky demon's invasion at all. However, after Lin Yuan left, he was shocked to realize that there were at least 100 sky demons following Lin Yuan. Even though he tried his best to stop them, it was still a drop in the bucket, because he didn't know how many sky demons had entered the deeper areas under Lin Yuan's cover. After thinking carefully for a moment, Ning Tianqing's expression suddenly changed, and he cursed angrily. What a great diversion! After figuring out some of the key points, Ning Tianqing didn't care about continuing to capture the sky demon. He waved his hand to summon a guard, and said in a deep voice, "Go and prepare a warship. I have something important to do, and I have to see foster father immediately." But the guard opened his mouth, and there was a hesitant expression on his face. Ning Tianqing had a special ability to sense the existence of the sky demon, and with the artifacts on him he could easily capture the sky demon. When he returned, he could send these magic sealing bottles filled with sky demon to the members of the top forces, and he could immediately exchange them for a large amount of rewards. Therefore, even if he had to disobey Ning Tianqing once, he didn't want to cut off everyone's source of income. I know what you are thinking, but now put away your greed and do as I say. Ning Tianqing grabbed the guard's collar and said with a gloomy face, "This matter concerns the survival of the Azure River Empire. If you make a mistake, even if I let you go, the Azure River Imperial family and Marshal Zhao won't let you go." "Yes, I will go and prepare." The guard was 1.9 meters tall, but in front of Ning Tianqing's strength, he was like a child who hadn't grown up. He was easily picked up by Ning Tianqing with one hand, and he didn't even have the slightest room to resist. He could only agree with a red face. After letting go of the guard, Ning Tianqing patted his cheek and cursed, "Motherf asterisk cur Black Jiao, I knew you would play tricks. No wonder you dared to make a bet. So you wanted to let the sky demon consume our strength first, and then reap the benefits? Don't let me see you again. Motherf asterisk cur, scheming against me." After cursing and venting a bit, Ning Tianqing walked towards the stern of the ship. A boat was quickly lowered by the soldiers on the ship. Even with the sky demon scurrying around, these ordinary soldiers didn't dare to be dissatisfied with Ning Tianqing's orders in the slightest. His ferocity was evident. Ning Tianqing slightly nodded and stepped onto the boat. He turned his head and roared, "What the F***ck are you standing there for? There are sky demon everywhere. Even if you run around with the magic sealing bottles, you can still catch a dozen. What are you looking at me for? Can you get rich looking at me? F***ck." After he finished speaking, the surrounding victorious army looked at each other in dismay. After a moment of silence, they actually ran around with the magic sealing bottles. Chapter 638. Time passed by slowly. Lin Yuan sat in the boat, drifting on the endless sea for more than half a month. He had never been out to sea in his previous life, nor did he learn how to use the stars to determine the direction. After less than 3 days out to sea, Lin Yuan was completely at a loss after losing all his references. He didn't even know where he was now. Moreover, the surrounding sea was beyond his imagination. Even if there were life forms, they were just ordinary sea creatures. He couldn't even catch a demon beast to ask for directions. Although the moist and salty sea breeze made him feel at ease as a water-flood dragon, this kind of aimless drifting made Lin Yuan inexplicably irritated. As for letting Ao Qian lead the way, That was obviously not in Lin Yuan's interest. Whether it was the blood feud in his previous life or the endless trouble caused by his kindness this time, Lin Yuan liked to have the greatest malice towards those who existed other than himself when he was thinking. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas that Lin Yuan knew in his previous life. Even if they were still tyrannical in the Tianwu continent and easily stood at the top of the food chain as an outsider, they still couldn't escape the incomparable nature of the Tianwu continent and the untainted world. Compared to those in the legends, it was an insult to call the Dragon Clan here trash. Who would have thought that the infamous Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't even have a few pure-blooded true dragons? In front of Lin Yuan, who grew from an ordinary black snake to a pure-blooded water flood dragon. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not interested in the methods to purify the bloodline or awaken the bloodline, Lin Yuan would rather believe that a pie would fall from the sky. Therefore, when he had to go to the endless sea to meet the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, Lin Yuan had to have Ao Qian firmly in his hands. At least he could ensure that when the two sides fell out, he had enough bargaining chips in his hands to negotiate with the other side. Although this premise had to be based on the premise that Ao Qian was indeed the descendant of some big shot in the Dragon Palace, at least he would have some confidence to reject the excessive request of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. He did not dare to say that he could run amok in the endless sea, but if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wanted to take advantage of him, they would have to think twice. However, if he let Ao Qian out, he as a foreign demon beast would be nothing more than a toy that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could do whatever they wanted. He wouldn't even be qualified to say no. Suddenly, Lin Yuan, who was sitting on the boat, stood up. His dark eyes flashed as he said in a deep voice, "Friends in front, since you're already here, why don't you come up and have a chat?" As the voice fell, the sea in front of Lin Yuan slightly fluctuated. A monster with a fish head, a human body, and a snake tail slowly splashed water. Although its dark green skin was rare, it was not as eye-catching as its muscles that contained explosive power. It also held a brass trident in its hand. Its appearance was very similar to the Naga that often appeared in movies and games in Lin Yuan's previous life. Lin Yuan and the Naga looked at each other in dismay. The Naga was silent for a moment, then silently turned around. Obviously, it had no intention to talk to Lin Yuan. It was as if it appeared only because Lin Yuan called it, and it showed its face out of politeness. You don't plan to say anything?" Lin Yuan was dumbfounded as he looked at the Naga that was about to leave. He could not stay silent any longer. The Naga turned its face, and with an extremely disdainful tone, it skillfully spat out the common language of the Sky Martial continent. "Should I say, the endless sea is a forbidden area for humans, and if you don't get lost, I will kill you?" Lin Yuan's eyes widened as he looked at the Naga in front of him in disbelief. This guy, did he also transmigrate and reborn? Logically speaking, when the demonic beasts in the sea saw humans, they would usually shout out like this before they died. Hearing Lin Yuan's doubtful voice, the Naga looked at Lin Yuan meaningfully. It casually stabbed the brass trident into the sea beside it, and it actually stood on the spot as if it was stabbing into the ground. Then it cupped its fists and said, "I can't beat you, sorry to disturb you, goodbye." Lin Yuan. After confirming with his eyes, this guy really transmigrated. The Naga jumped, like a sea snake entering the water, but it only made a jumping action, and that somewhat funny fish head crashed into a piece of solidified ice. It wanted to use its strong arms to support itself on the ice to stand up, but it kept sliding on the ice, like a salted fish that had come ashore. "What the hell are you trying to do?" After dozens of attempts to stand up, the Naga finally could not endure it any longer. It lay down on the ice as if it had accepted its fate, and weakly roared at Lin Yuan. "How do I get to the West Sea Dragon Palace?" Lin Yuan tilted his head, and resisted the urge to laugh at the other party's salted fish flopping around. Even though he did not know what was going on with the Sky Martial continent's chaotic geographical names, those who had a little understanding of the Sky Martial continent would know that the Hengduan mountain range was located in the center of the Sky Martial continent, and the Endless Sea was the sea that Lin Yuan had only entered after he had kept going south. No matter how he thought about it, it should be called the South Sea Dragon Palace. However, whether it was Ao Qian or other existences, It seemed that no one questioned the name of the West Sea Dragon Palace. The Naga sighed and said, "You can just float forward like this. When you see a dragon bloodline demonic beast, it means that you have reached the territory of the West Sea Dragon Palace. This is still the Outer Sea, and the West Sea Dragon Palace does not care about the barren resources and land here. Us demonic beasts from the Outer Sea will not be able to come into contact with the Dragon Palace's species, much less know the location of the West Sea Dragon Palace. So, you are just wasting your breath trying to stop me. Why bother? Why don't we just pretend that we have never seen each other?" Lin Yuan was speechless. He had never thought that the speed of the boat could reach at least 2,000 kilometers per hour. Such a speed in his previous life was already at the level of a fighter jet. However, after maintaining this speed for half a month, he was still in the outer sea of the endless sea? Was it because he did not recognize the direction clearly? So when he was rushing, he deviated from the route and went in circles? Or was the endless sea really unimaginably vast, and was it really worthy of the word endless? "You seem to be very afraid of me, but also not afraid of me. Why?" Lin Yuan asked in confusion. This Naga did not seem to be willing to have any conflict with him, but intentionally or unintentionally, it revealed a kind of contempt towards Lin Yuan. It seemed that letting Lin Yuan continue to wander in the outer sea would not affect these demonic beasts at all. A big trouble had appeared in front of them, but they did not seem to care about it at all. This was very contradictory, and also very difficult to understand. However, Lin Yuan was very interested in the way the demonic beasts thought. Chapter 639. I admit that I am not your opponent. If you have a head-on conflict with me, I will be the one to die in the end. Naga seemed to have adapted to the environment on the ice. She coiled her snake tail in a strange posture, as if she was sitting on the ice. Then she slowly opened her hands to Lin Yuan and continued. "But in the end, you are just a human being. The ocean environment is not suitable for your survival. You need water and food, and you can't get any of these from the ocean, right?" Lin Yuan nodded slightly and did not comment on Naga's opinion. Naga still opened her hands and said indifferently, "Powerful humans like you are not rare in the outer sea. The outer sea monsters have no ability to deal with powerful invaders like you, but they can eliminate you in another way. For example, they can turn a blind eye to your existence and watch you starve to death because of the lack of supplies. It's that simple." Hearing Naga's explanation, Lin Yuan suddenly understood why the humans in this world did not care about the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. No matter how powerful the demonic beasts on land were, it was impossible for humans to be helpless against them. Humans had countless ways to kill them, because humans were also a species that belonged to the earth. In the same environment, humans could use their stronger adaptability and learning ability to defeat all opponents that they could not defeat in their eyes. But the ocean was different, especially the endless sea, which was almost endless. The sea near the Tianwu continent was still okay. At least there were some islands to stop at and get fruits, meat and fresh water. There were also humans who set up camps there, and nibbled away the territories of the sea monsters bit by bit. But those places were not worth mentioning in the endless sea. Not to mention the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, even the outer sea monsters looked down on such territories. But even in this sea area that was occupied by humans, human merchant ships only dared to sail close to the mainland. Moreover, they could be attacked by the sea monsters at any time, and be dragged to the bottom of the sea to become a delicious meal for the sea monsters. According to the territorial division in Naga's mouth, the sea area where Lin Yuan was currently located without any reference was the real existence of the outer sea. The islands and sea areas occupied by humans, although equally vast, could only be regarded as a coastal existence. Except for the sea monsters who wanted to change their taste, there were no monsters living there. Were the powerful humans ambitious enough to leave the coastal areas and use their own strength to conquer the outer seas, or even the deep sea? Perhaps the demon beasts in the outer sea were no match for these human beings, but they could choose to deal with them coldly. They could let these human beings wander freely on the ocean, or they could use their talents or powers to interfere with the sea, causing the human fleets to be completely lost in the endless sea. When these human fleets ran out of supplies, they would naturally be eliminated. In Lin Yuan's previous life, In a world where there were no demon beasts, humans had spent hundreds and thousands of years to develop abilities like star grasping, sea route maps, and so on that allowed them to determine their position on the ocean. However, they could only run on fixed routes. The unknown sea was still fatal to them. Furthermore, this was a world where demonic beasts existed. Among the humans on the Tianwu continent, only the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, a powerful demonic beast force, had bared its ferocious fangs to the humans on the coast. Without experienced captains and sailors, any human who dared to leave the coastal areas would either be cruelly slaughtered by the demon beasts, or forever lost in the endless sea. In such a big environment, not to mention conquering the ocean, even uncovering the mysterious veil of the ocean was just a joke. What a pity, I won't starve to death, and I won't die of thirst. Lin Yuan gently shook his head, his black eyes revealing a trace of ridicule. He said in a deep voice, "Do you really think that an existence that doesn't even need to breathe will die in the endless sea because of the reason you imagined?" Speaking until here, Lin Yuan gently snapped his fingers. The ice that had been adapted to by the Naga suddenly changed. Pieces of ice formed shackles that bound the Naga. No matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't shake the shackles in the slightest. With another snap of his fingers, the Naga's frantic struggle instantly stopped. This was because it felt that sharp icicles had appeared inside the shackles, easily piercing through its hard shell and deeply piercing into its flesh. A large amount of dark red blood flowed out, but it was instantly assimilated by the shackles, turning into blood-red ice. "Then what's your name?" Lin Yuan slightly raised his eyebrows. His voice became hoarse and low. The tyrant song of the world and dragons might erupted at the same time, causing Lin Yuan's voice to emit a strange magic, making people unconsciously immerse themselves in his voice. Fin Barton, the most outstanding warrior of the Barton family." The Naga tried to resist, its pupils shaking violently. However, under Lin Yuan's full power skills, all of its resistance was like a joke. Whether it was its body or spirit, it was imprisoned by Lin Yuan in an instant. Before Lin Yuan could break this imprisonment, it was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's expression did not change in the slightest when he heard the Naga's name that was similar to a Westerner's in his previous life. In any case, the Naga's appearance was already sufficiently westernized. However, this so-called family made Lin Yuan quite interested. The humans of the Sky Martial continent had their own surnames, but the demonic beasts did not. Even the mountain-shaking apes, a tribe in the periphery of the Hengduan mountain range, only had a name other than Gravel, as the name of the tribe. However, this Naga, a demonic beast from the outer sea, had its own surname. Obviously, the demonic beasts of the sea had already given birth to their own social structure. The appearance of a surname signified the appearance of a social class. Commoners and slaves only had a name, and those who had a surname were basically nobles. The powerful nobles stood at the top of this social structure. However, the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range did not have such a division. In their eyes, other than the Beast King, the rest of the demonic beasts were no different to them. Even the Beast King did not have a surname. Other than themselves, whether it was humans or other demonic beasts, they would only call them by their tribe's name. Is this part of the sea the territory of the Barton family? Lin Yuan stared at the Naga in front of him and asked in a deep voice. Yes, this part of the sea is the hunting ground of the Barton family. The demonic beasts that live in this part of the sea are either loyal to the Barton family, or become the Barton family's slaves and food storage. Finn was imprisoned on the ice block, but he still nodded. Chapter 640. Are there many factions like the Barton clan in the outer seas? Lin Yuan once again threw out a question. It was just like how the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wanted to recruit Lin Yuan to set foot in the northern frontier, or the Hengduan mountain range. Even if both sides were demonic beasts, it didn't mean that they were good brothers who worked together. There were still some differences between them. Just like Ning Tiansheng, who was planted in the Qingjiang Empire, the ocean demonic beasts had been drooling over the Tianwu continent for a long time. But now, it seemed that the ocean demonic beasts weren't that united. Just like how the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas looked down on the ocean demonic beasts, the ocean demonic beasts were also looked down on by the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. The ocean demonic beasts were clearly divided into two camps. Under such conditions, if the benefits were right, it wasn't impossible to establish their own faction in the ocean demonic beasts. Even if they couldn't establish their own faction, they could still use the ocean demonic beasts as pawns. When necessary, they could use them to fight against the dragon palace of the four seas. How is that possible? The Great Barton clan is one of a kind. Hearing Lin Yuan's question, Finn seemed to have been insulted. He actually ignored the pain and restraint and started to struggle madly on the ice shackles again. It seemed that he wanted to beat up Lin Yuan for asking this question to vent his anger. Lin Yuan pursed his lips. It seemed that this Barton clan was really similar to the Western clans of the Middle Ages in his previous life. They were arrogant, conceited, and brainless. They all thought that they were heroic knights and valued their clan's honor more than anything else. A simple conflict could even lead to a family feud that could last for hundreds of years. The Barton clan is so powerful. How could you not know where the Dragon Palace of the West Sea is? Lin Yuan's black eyes turned. He sneered and said, "Aren't you the most outstanding warrior of the Barton clan? Or are you just bragging to me, and the truth isn't like that?" When his voice fell, Finn was like a deflated balloon. He stopped struggling madly and said helplessly, "You damned outsider. All right, I admit that the Barton clan isn't the only useless existence. In the ocean demonic beasts, there are countless clans of various sizes. The Barton clan is just an ordinary clan." At this point, Finn Barton raised his comical and ugly fish head and said seriously, "But I, Finn Barton, am truly the most outstanding warrior of the Barton family." Lin Yuan was speechless. It was just as he expected. The Naga was just a demonic beast. And the Naga he caught was just a demonic beast clan demonic beast. But this Naga demonic beast was demonic beast was demonic beast. If the Barton family was truly a unique existence, then either Finn had overestimated himself, or the strength of the sea monsters was pitifully weak, especially those that lived in the outer seas. Moreover, in a territory that was even vaster than the Hengduan Mountains, how could there be a force that could dictate everything? Even the demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range would not treat the demonic beast imperial court as a serious matter. The demonic beast kings and their clans all preferred to fight for themselves before they encountered a situation that they could not resolve. However, this Naga was definitely a weirdo. Under the combination of Dragon's might and world tyrant Sing, it was still able to brag without batting an eyelid. This meant that even it believed its own lies. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to say such things in its current state. You don't seem to have grasped the main point in my words. Lin Yuan tilted his head and said slowly, "I'm asking you if you know the way to the West Sea Dragon Palace, not how powerful the Barton family is or how powerful you are. Remember your current identity, you are just my captive." Finn was like a frosted eggplant. It lowered its head helplessly and said in a deep voice, "I'm serious. If you continue to float forward, you will reach the territory of the West Sea Dragon Palace. There are many dragon blood demonic beasts there, and they are different from the outer seas. They are very resistant to outsiders entering the territory of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Once they discover your existence, they will immediately appear." "So you have no value?" Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows again. His expression was not very good. No matter what, Finn was considered a noble among the sea monsters. Even if the strength of this noble force was very weak, it should still have a certain degree of understanding of the endless sea. However, it now said that it did not know the location of the West Sea Dragon Palace. This meant that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had a very strong control over the endless sea. These noble demonic beasts in the outer seas did not even have the qualifications to enter the territory of the Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan was once again vigilant and nervous about the unknown future. At this stage, provoking an existence like the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did not seem to be the right decision. Hearing the murderous intent in Lin Yuan's words, Finn seemed to have sobered up in time. It immediately shook its head and said loudly, "No, you have to believe that I still have value. Although the Barton family is just an ordinary family, they definitely have rich reserves. Whether you want deep-sea minerals or underwater spiritual items, I can get them for you. You name a price and I will pay my own ransom. Lin Yuan was speechless. He still felt that this guy seemed to have transmigrated. This guy seemed to be very familiar with kidnapping and extortion. However, Lin Yuan had never heard of any news of human fleets returning from the endless sea. He also did not know if the sea monsters had made deals with human forces. For example, letting humans exchange spiritual items and minerals for humans lost at sea. Lin Yuan shook his head and said expressionlessly, I said that I only want to know the location of the West Sea Dragon Palace. The minerals and spiritual items you mentioned are of no value to me. I will count to 3. If you still can't give me a satisfactory answer, I will. As the saying went, every snake had its own way. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had a very strong control over the endless sea. However, Lin Yuan still did not believe that these demonic beasts in the outer seas did not even know how to go to the deep sea. This Finn most likely knew something, but it was just unwilling to tell him. Furthermore, it was the kind of resistance that came from the soul that made it refuse to answer Lin Yuan's question under such circumstances. Even during the conversation, it was thinking of ways to change the topic and avoid all questions about the West Sea Dragon Palace. Wait. Finn's throat wriggled in pain. He gritted his teeth and said, I do not know the location of the West Sea Dragon Palace, but I know that there is a demonic beast that knows how to answer your question. Chapter 641. Lin Yuan snorted with a gloomy face. It's true. There are many demonic beasts in the outer sea, but none of them have the blood of the dragon tribe. It is said that all the demonic beasts who have awakened the blood of the dragon tribe will be taken to the deep sea and trained by the dragon palace. Even the demonic beasts with a low level of awakening will become soldiers who patrol the sea for the dragon palace. Therefore, the difference between the demonic beasts in the outer sea and the demonic beasts in the inner sea is whether they have the blood of the dragon tribe or not. But I heard that there are evil dragons in the dragon tribe, which refers to the demonic beasts with the blood of the dragon tribe who have violated the commandments of the dragon tribe. The stronger demonic beasts will be imprisoned in the deep-sea prison of the endless sea, where they will be retrained and re-educated, waiting for the dragon tribe's judgment. The weaker demonic beasts will be killed on the spot. In fact, there are many demonic beasts with the blood of the dragon tribe in the outer sea. They all escaped from the prison at the bottom of the sea. In the early years, the dragon palace might send demonic beasts to capture them. But in recent decades, there have been many terrifying demonic beasts in the outer sea, and they even have the potential to compete with the dragon palace. Now, the dragon palace did not allow the demonic beasts in the outer sea to enter the deep sea, and the demonic beasts in the outer sea would not casually let the members of the dragon palace in the outer sea. There were more and more conflicts between the demonic beasts and the outer sea, and a full-scale war could break out at any time. Among the evil dragons that escaped, a considerable number of them stayed in the outer sea. Some of them lived in seclusion, and some of them became leaders of the demonic beasts in the outer sea. If you ask me where the dragon palace in the West Sea is, I can't answer you. With my strength, I dare to enter the deep sea. Once I am discovered by the demonic beasts with the blood of the dragon tribe, I will die. I don't even have the courage to go near the dragon palace, let alone explore it. Finn struggled and said, but in the territory of the Barton family, there is an evil dragon that lives in seclusion. Although I am not familiar with it, the Barton family has some friendship with it. If you have the courage, I can take you to it. Hearing Finn's words, Lin Yuan's eyelids drooped. It seemed that it was just as he had expected. Although the overall strength of the demon beasts in the outer sea was not as strong as the dragon palace of the Four Seas, it was not difficult for such a huge territory to raise a few great demon beasts that could compete with the dragon experts. The two sides rejected each other and formed their own system. Sooner or later, a conflict would erupt. No wonder the dragon palace of the Four Seas had not only started to set foot on the land, but also recruited the dragon blood demon beasts scattered on the land. After Lin Yuan demonstrated his ability to purify the dragon blood, they even settled Ao Qian in the northern frontier, and gave up the evil cult to help Lin Yuan complete his plan to disrupt the southern part of the Shenwu dynasty. For a race that valued bloodline like the dragons, be it the cultists or the monsters from the outer seas, They were never their own people. They showed kindness to Lin Yuan not only because Lin Yuan had the ability to purify bloodlines, but also because Lin Yuan had the bloodline of the dragons. Therefore, they did not care about Lin Yuan's opinion, and classified Lin Yuan as part of the dragon system. However, such words were just pleasing to the ears. To put it bluntly, except for the descendants of the dragons of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, no matter if it was the subordinates of the Dragon Palace or a foreign dragon blood demon beast like Lin Yuan, in their eyes, they were nothing but cannon fodder in a war that could break out at any time. They lured Lin Yuan into the sea, because the demon beasts in the outer seas had begun to compete with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Lead the way. Lin Yuan waved his hand, and the ice shackles that bound Finn instantly melted. However, with the strong physique of a demon beast, Finn would not faint from excessive bleeding. The moment the shackles melted, the wounds on his body began to wriggle and heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finn looked at Lin Yuan meaningfully. Without saying anything, he turned around and jumped into the sea. Lin Yuan took a step out of the skiff and followed closely behind Finn, piercing into the sea like a sharp arrow. Puppets did not need to breathe or eat, and with the triple protection of Lin Yuan's divine sense, the eye of God, and the system scanning, even though Finn dived deeper and deeper, Lin Yuan could clearly see the surrounding environment. After sinking for more than 10,000 meters, Lin Yuan gradually felt some pressure from the surrounding undercurrents. He raised his head to look at Finn, who was leading the way, and saw a painful expression on Finn's face. Obviously, this level of water pressure was not something a demon beast of his level could easily withstand. However, Finn did not turn his head to look at Lin Yuan's movements. Obviously, he was not playing tricks. With this guy's cowardly personality, it was impossible for him to bring Lin Yuan into the deep sea, because if he did that, he would be the first to collapse under the pressure. The best way to die would be to explode and die. The ocean was a magical place. The most basic way to distinguish the strength of sea creatures was to keep diving. The deeper the sea creature dived, the stronger the sea creature was. Because there were undercurrents and water pressure at the bottom of the sea, most creatures' bodies could not withstand the water pressure at the bottom of the sea. Even the dragons, who were the overlords of the sea, had to use demonic power to protect their bodies. Otherwise, they would also be crushed. Otherwise, they would not lock the evil dragon to the bottom of the sea as a punishment. As he dived deeper and deeper, Lin Yuan also saw more and more sea creatures. However, most of the sea creatures just looked at Lin Yuan curiously, and did not have the intention to provoke him. Not to mention that the dragon aura that Lin Yuan emitted from time to time was enough to make these sea creatures, whose average strength was in the wisdom state, revere him. Just the fact that he kept diving into the deep sea was enough to make these sea creatures lose interest in provoking Lin Yuan. However, no matter how much this guy looked like a human, he was definitely not. No human dared to enter the endless outer sea casually, and no human dared to dive into the endless outer sea, because human respiratory organs could not absorb the oxygen in the sea, and their lung capacity was not enough to support them to swim freely in the sea. If a human went into the sea, they would mostly rely on their own true chi and earth energy to force the surrounding water away. However, they only dared to move in the sea at a depth of a few hundred meters. Finn, there are more and more sea creatures around. Lin Yuan opened his mouth to speak without any fear. The ability of the King of Water made the sea water obediently avoid Lin Yuan's mouth, and did not muffle his voice. They don't dare to come and cause trouble. Finn did not even turn his head. Even his voice was weak. It seemed that this deep dive had already exhausted him. Lin Yuan nodded and did not comment on Finn's words. Although he did not know why, he always felt that these sea creatures seemed to be more sensible than the land creatures. If it were the land creatures, their first reaction would be to fight to the death when they saw an unknown creature invading their territory. Chapter 642. Lin Yuan didn't get the answer to this question until he saw a giant sea monster pass by. The sea beast didn't do anything. It just swam gently in the sea near Lin Yuan, and swallowed a large number of small sea beasts, and even demonic beasts within a breath. Obviously, these small sea beasts couldn't hurt the giant sea beast with their own strength. They could only be digested and excreted by the giant sea beast. So obviously, It wasn't that the sea monsters didn't like to fight. They didn't want to provoke Lin Yuan. They just knew how to adapt to the situation. The environment here was so harsh that it was far beyond the imagination of the creatures on land. Even if they were just hurrying on a journey, they might be swallowed by the giant sea beasts passing by. Even struggling and escaping was a luxury. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. This was the eternal law of nature. Demonic beasts on the land circled their own territories and didn't allow any creatures to offend their dignity, because those who were qualified to own territories were the top predators. But for the sea monsters, territory was just a general concept. In this environment, it was impossible to avoid the tragedy of the big fish eating the small fish. When disaster came, they couldn't even escape. If they wanted to survive, they had to be smart and alert. Go down for another 30,000 meters, and you will see a sunken ship. The evil dragon I mentioned lives in that sunken ship. Finn paused and Lin Yuan, who was following behind him, almost hit his back. Fortunately, even in the deep sea, Lin Yuan's reflexes didn't weaken and he braked in time. At this time, Finn turned his head and looked at Lin Yuan. His originally green skin had a strange purple-red color. It could be seen that this guy had reached his limit. If he continued to dive, the water pressure would be enough to kill him. You want to run? Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed and a fierce aura burst out, instantly locking onto Finn in front of him. Finn helplessly spread out his hands and said bitterly, "Boss, what I said is true. There is a hidden evil dragon living in the sunken ship below. It must know what you want to know. If you have any questions, just ask it directly. I really can't go down. If I continue to dive, I will definitely die without a complete corpse." Lin Yuan tilted his head and sneered. "Why should I believe you? You are not telling the truth at all. You can't even go down, and you say you are friends with it? How do I know that it is an evil dragon in the sunken ship and not a fatal trap? I swear on the honor of the Barton family that what I said is true. If there is even half a lie, I will die a horrible death." Finn's face turned red and he growled, "You can see me now. If I continue to dive down, I will definitely die. You go down and find that evil dragon, I will wait here. This is the hunting ground of the Barton family. I will believe you this time." Lin Yuan took a deep look at Finn and said coldly, "No matter if it is a fatal trap or not, I will still go down. If you lead me to a trap, then you better pray that I will really die in there. Otherwise, even if you escape to the ends of the earth, I will still have a way to find you." Finn saw that Lin Yuan was no longer forcing him to continue diving when he said this. He clearly let out a sigh of relief. Lin Yuan looked at Finn's gradually relaxed expression and said faintly, "Also, when I enter the sunken ship, you better stay here. If I find out that you want to sneak away, I don't think you want to know what will happen to you." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan had already turned into a black arrow and plunged into the sunken ship. Finn curled his lips and subconsciously wanted to float up. However, before he could do anything, a cold breath stuck to the place 4 inches above his navel. That was the vital part of their race. Once it was injured, even the almighty immortals would not be able to save him. Finn shivered. Lin Yuan's threat was still echoing in his ears. He sighed helplessly and could only continue to endure the water pressure around him. He had already reached the limit of his endurance and silently waited for Lin Yuan to come out of the sunken ship or die in it. He did not deceive Lin Yuan. There was indeed an evil dragon living in the sunken ship. Moreover, its status in the Dragon Palace was not low. It was only later that it violated some rules and was classified as an evil dragon by the Dragon Palace. It was said that this guy had been imprisoned in the underwater prison for nearly 1,000 years, and had long become a complete madman. Although it later escaped from the underwater prison and successfully avoided the guards of the West Sea Dragon Palace and came to the open sea, this guy's brain was not very good. It looked normal, but from time to time, crazy ideas would pop up. Moreover, it was the kind of madness that would not even care about its own life in order to achieve its goal. Over the years, many monsters had entered the sunken ship, but only a few had come out alive. And even if they could escape from the hands of the mad dragon, they would basically end up with injuries all over their bodies. He did not think that this outsider was a match for the mad dragon, but just in case, He would not leave this sea area until he was sure that Lin Yuan was dead. After all, this guy was too strange. So strange that Finn actually faintly felt that the mad dragon might not be able to do anything to Lin Yuan. On the other side, Lin Yuan, who had entered the sunken ship, only gave Finn a warning before he felt a sense of weightlessness. Only then did he clench his teeth and reach out to pat the beast pouch at his waist before he completely lost consciousness and released his original body. The next moment, the divine sense dissipated and was directly sent out by the puppet body, returning to Lin Yuan's original body. The feeling of weightlessness dissipated instantly. Lin Yuan also began to turn his head and look around. A hint of surprise flashed through his heterochromatic vertical pupils. Previously, he didn't understand why a Sin dragon would live in a sunken ship, just like how he didn't understand why a human ship would sink in this sea area. From the appearance of the sunken ship, the shipbuilding technology of this ship was at least 200 years behind the current Qing River Empire. However, 200 years ago, humans had never stepped out of the endless sea. Sea trade was all along the edges of the main roads. They hadn't even stepped out of the coast area, let alone this open sea that was extremely mysterious to humans. It couldn't be that the ship was built by the sea demonic beasts, right? It was not until after entering the sunken ship that Lin Yuan discovered that the interior of this sunken ship was actually an independent Sumeru space. Chapter 643. This Sumeru space was not big. Whether it was the secret realm under the strange lake, or the tomb the fire Kirin gave him, it was far bigger than the Sumeru space inside the sunken ship. However, the spiritual energy here was extremely rich. In Lin Yuan's experience, other than his own nest, there was no other place with a richer spiritual energy. It could even be said that his nest was far inferior to this Sumeru space. There was not a drop of seawater here, but he could feel the sticky moisture under his feet. Obviously, the spiritual energy here had begun to liquefy. If the green leaf water lotus grew in such an environment, its growth rate would be greatly increased. Then there was the general structure of this Sumeru space. It seemed to be the interior of a ship, but unlike the sunken ship outside, which was full of all kinds of microorganisms and marine plants, this Sumeru space, which was similar to a cabin, was brand new. The construction style was similar to the British style. Just by looking at it, one could feel the luxurious and romantic atmosphere. What was even more frightening was that in this cabin-like shumi world, there were all kinds of entertainment facilities, almost all of which existed in Lin Yuan's memory, but should not appear in this world. Tables such as poker, baccarat, and so on could be seen everywhere. There were even billiard tables and slot machines. This ship did not seem to belong to this world. "Welcome, friend." A voice with a smile sounded, waking Lin Yuan up from his thoughts. Lin Yuan turned his head and looked in the direction of the figure. It was a gorgeous solid wood bar. A creature wearing a white shirt and a black vest stood behind the bar. The reason it was called a creature was because the guy who dressed like a bartender had the head of a snake, but there were 2 horns on his head. His body wasn't too exaggerated, just enough to support the shirt and vest on his body. However, the arms that stretched out from the sleeves weren't thick, but rather slender. The palm made up of 3 sharp claws was also different from the 5 nimble fingers of a human. It was an exaggeration to say that it looked like a human. It was also an exaggeration to say that it looked like a dragon. Freak. Lin Yuan could only comment on the creature standing behind the bar. The freak dressed like a bartender was carefully wiping a glass goblet with a snow-white towel. He didn't even look at Lin Yuan. He took the initiative to greet him, but he didn't intend to continue speaking. Lin Yuan was also silent for a moment. His gaze once again fell on the wine cabinet behind the freak. It was still some wine that should only appear in his memory. Just the ones he recognized were whiskey, brandy, Remy Martin and so on. There were also various kinds of red wine and champagne neatly arranged. However, it was obvious that none of them were produced in the Tianwu continent. "You're very interesting." The freak stopped wiping the goblet. His golden eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "Although not many people have dared to enter my place in recent years, without exception, everyone who enters would ask me about the table, the props and the wine behind me. But you didn't. On the contrary, you are very calm, as if you know these things." Lin Yuan didn't reply. He just wriggled his body and walked to the front of the bar. He said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know what you are, I'm very sorry. I don't have time to play house with you. I can see that you treasure these things very much. So, I think, you don't want me to break them in front of you, right? You're really interesting." The freak silently lowered his vertical pupils and smiled mysteriously. It had been a long time since he had met such an interesting customer. In the past, those who came here, whether they came here on their own or were tricked in, their first reaction was shock. Then, when they saw him, they would usually kneel down and beg for mercy, hoping to leave this place alive. Then they would all become his meal. However, Lin Yuan just glanced at the general layout of the place indifferently and took the initiative to threaten his existence. This was the first time in decades. West Sea Dragon Palace. How do I get there? Lin Yuan raised his eyelids slightly. His gaze was somewhat gloomy. What would you like to drink? The freak smiled in response to Lin Yuan. I forgot to ask for your name. You can call me bartender because I don't remember my original name. West Sea Dragon Palace. How do I get there? Lin Yuan didn't want to waste time with the freak. He asked again with a sullen face. I can feel that you have a very pure dragon bloodline in your body. I think your father should be a true dragon. Your mother also belongs to the Dragon Palace with a more noble bloodline. It's very interesting that someone like you doesn't know how to get to the Dragon Palace. As if he couldn't see the coldness in Lin Yuan's eyes, the bartender still had a mysterious smile on his face. He said indifferently, although I do treasure the things here, I can see from your eyes that you know where this place is. So, even if you break the things here, I can easily restore them. You can't threaten me. Seeing Lin Yuan remain silent, the bartender slowly said, every place has its own rules. I don't care where you come from. Since you want to get information from me, there are only two ways. Either you drink with me. If I get drunk first, I can tell you anything you want to know. But if you get drunk first, you'll be my dinner tonight. How about it? The moment the bartender's voice fell, Lin Yuan suddenly felt a chill crawl all over his body. It was as if an invisible Grim Reaper had quietly appeared behind him and was waving its scythe, ready to harvest his soul at any time. What about the other way? Lin Yuan glanced to the side and exhaled a turbid breath helplessly. The freak in front of him was very strong. Although he couldn't see through him, he could be sure from this Sumeru space that this guy was at least in existence in the desolate demon realm. In addition, he had the identity of the Sumeru space's master. Lin Yuan knew very well that he was most likely not a match for him. Especially in the opponent's territory, the chances of winning were undoubtedly smaller. Equivalent exchange. The bartender put the wine glass in his hand on the bar counter and said with a smile, you ask me a question, and I'll ask you a question. If the answer you give doesn't satisfy me, or if the answers to the two questions are not equivalent, you will still become my dinner. It's that simple. Lin Yuan's lips squirmed as he silently cursed a few times. Then he slowly said, drinking is not a problem, but how much do you think you have to make me drunk? As for equivalent exchange, I think you might have some misunderstanding about equivalent. I asked you the question of how to get to the West Sea Dragon Palace, but if you ask me what 1 + 1 equals, how should I answer so that the two answers have the same value? Chapter 644. To me, the location of the Dragon Palace is a simple question. It's as simple as what you said about 1 + 1. Therefore, the answers to these two questions are equal. You just have to answer me truthfully. The bartender held the goblet in front of him and shook it gently. A glass of mellow red wine appeared in front of Lin Yuan. He still had an inexplicable smile on his face as he said in a deep voice, as for the wine, don't worry. You can't play any tricks here. Whether it's you or me, once we drink enough, we'll naturally be drunk and unconscious. Methods to sober up won't work here. It's purely a competition of drinking capacity. Why should I believe you? Lin Yuan curled his lips. He was not a controlling person. Whether it was the Stoneclaw Forest or the northern frontier, he could rest assured that others would take care of them. As long as the situation was going in the direction he wanted, he could leave it all to others. However, he did not like the feeling of leaving everything to others. Because you have no other choice but to believe me. The bartender slowly spread his hands and the smile on his face faded. In an instant, Lin Yuan felt as if an invisible hand was strangling his throat. It was as if the bartender only needed to think about it, and he would be obliterated on the spot, without even having the chance to display his invincible combat power. Fortunately, this feeling only lasted for a moment. The inexplicable smile on the bartender's face appeared again. The invisible pressure also disappeared as if it had never appeared before. Lin Yuan cursed silently in his heart again. The endless sea was obviously an extremely difficult dungeon for him now. It was definitely equivalent to a lunatic's dream to run amok with his laughable strength. Not to mention the true dragons hidden in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even the bartender in front of him could easily erase his existence. Then let's make a deal. Lin Yuan opened his big mouth and said in a deep voice. However, this is a real deal. You can use anything in exchange for me to fulfill one of your wishes, but as you said, it must be fair. Your efforts must be proportional to your benefits. I can accept, including but not limited to, all kinds of secrets and everything I have seen and heard as bargaining chips to trade with you. You're really different. The bartender said this for the third time. His golden eyes seemed to be smiling as he said, Then, what can you exchange your life for? You won't be able to get anything. Lin Yuan shook his head and said expressionlessly, not to mention that his life couldn't be used as a bargaining chip, but as long as he didn't leave this Sumeru space, even if his life was still in the other party's hands, this kind of trade obviously wouldn't work. Even if it could be done, Lin Yuan would still express his resistance. The bartender was silent for a moment. Then, with a strange smile on his face, he said, Then I will use the control of this Sumeru world to exchange a path with you. Do you have a way to get me to the world where these things exist? The bartender's mental state was obviously abnormal. At the very least, normal people wouldn't be able to understand his train of thought. Lin Yuan couldn't even imagine the connection between the two problems. However, without the unnecessary threats and nonsense, there was nothing to complain about. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He didn't get the system's affirmation, but he didn't get a rejection either. Then he said in a low voice, No, this bargaining chip isn't enough. The things in Sumeru world existed in Lin Yuan's memory. However, it was obviously not unique to the world where he lived in his previous life. If it was in the past, Lin Yuan wouldn't have believed in those stories in novels and anime. However, now that he had personally come to another world, he was afraid that those parallel worlds really did exist. Even if it was just to confuse Hongjun, there were probably a lot of parallel worlds that were created on their own, or by humans. However, whether the ship came from his previous life or from another parallel world, the system had a way to send any living creature through the sea of suffering to that world. It was just that such a privilege would never be available to Lin Yuan. The bartender didn't suspect Lin Yuan at all. With an inexplicable smile on his face, he slowly began to tell him about the location of the Dragon Palace, the underwater prison, and even some of the secrets of the sea and human shipwrecks. Because Lin Yuan said that he could accept these things as bargaining chips in the trade, now it seemed that the bartender didn't suspect him. Stop. After talking about more than 300 secrets, Lin Yuan, who had gotten the system's affirmation, stopped the bartender coldly. The bartender's face, which had been smiling all this time, finally showed a hint of genuine joy. The bargaining chip you gave me is enough. I said that the trade is fair, so I won't take advantage of you. Lin Yuan nodded slightly at the bartender and said indifferently, I can open a door that connects the two worlds for you, but it can only be used once. In other words, after you go to that world, it's almost impossible for you to return here. At the same time, in that world, you won't change your species, but you will lose all your power and even the qualification to cultivate. You will have to start all over again. The bartender. What if I increase the price? Hearing Lin Yuan's following conditions, the bartender's face slowly revealed a dignified expression, as if he still didn't suspect Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan shook his head lightly and said indifferently, The rules are like this. If you want to change to another world, you have to start all over again. As for the matter of you not being able to cultivate, it's not the rules. It's that the world you want to go to is most likely the end of the world. It's already extremely difficult to find transcendent creatures, and it's even more difficult to become one of them. Although the gods and Buddhas in that world were dim, there were many legends and biographies since ancient times. There were definitely transcendent creatures, but compared to the monsters in the Tianwu continent, they were definitely not much. The most realistic thing was the existence of spiritual energy, and the amount of spiritual energy in the two worlds was completely different. Although it was just a fragment of the primordial era, the world in his previous life had indeed entered the end of the world. Even the remaining transcendent creatures had learned to tuck their tails between their legs and hide, not daring to appear in the eyes of the world. To put it nicely, it was called, "If the saint doesn't die, the thief won't stop." To put it bluntly, if the world was compared to a fruit, be it cultivators or monsters, they were actually all vermin. They devoured spiritual energy to strengthen their bodies, but those who could achieve immortality were few and far between. However, their cultivation would decay when they died, and it wouldn't be reflected back to the world. Therefore, the spiritual energy would become less and less. Relying on the world's natural production, it was far from being comparable to the devouring speed of cultivators and monsters. Therefore, every once in a while, there would be an end of the world. Chapter 645. Forget it, then. The bartender shook his head, looking like he had lost interest. Although he was curious about this strange world, if the price of satisfying this curiosity was to lose everything he had, then there was no need. Although you have lost interest in going to that world, a deal is a deal. The reward you give me will not be refunded, but you can change it to another wish. Lin Yuan looked directly at the bartender, and there was no emotion brewing in his eyes. The system would not let go of any opportunity to absorb the power of incense. So the moment the bartender agreed to the deal, there was no way to avoid it. Lin Yuan even felt that the system was kind enough to allow the bartender to change his wish, instead of forcing him to go to the world he wanted to go to in the first place. The bartender touched his chin with his claws, and his golden vertical pupils flashed. He said indifferently, "In that case, tell me, what is the purpose of asking about the location of the Dragon Palace?" This. Lin Yuan's breathing paused slightly, and he looked at the bartender in disbelief, and asked tentatively, "Do you know that after I answer your question, except for the information that is of little value to you, this entire Sumeru world will be absorbed and sacrificed? Are you sure you only want to know this question, and not ask for other rewards?" This freak might really be a lunatic. If it was interested in another world, it would be reasonable to pay a large price, but it chose such a stupid reward when it could not get back its bargaining chip. It was indeed a little out of Lin Yuan's expectations. Logically speaking, 1/3 of the power of incense would be shared between Lin Yuan and the sacrificer. But the bartender's question was equivalent to giving up all the power of incense in exchange for Lin Yuan's answer, and there was no possibility of going back on his word. However, although this freak was crazy, its strength was really unfathomable. If it felt that it was at a disadvantage, it might cause trouble. Even without the suppression of the Sumeru world, Lin Yuan was not sure if he could beat the bartender. However, the bartender's offer was indeed tempting. Those miscellaneous information could also be exchanged for power of incense. After that, the bartender and Lin Yuan would not forget this information, but it was a one-time deal. If the two sides had a second deal, this information could not be extracted from the system at all. And even this time, the amount of power of incense exchanged for these information and secrets was not much. But sacrificing an entire Sumeru world to exchange for power of incense was very tempting. Lin Yuan even suspected that the power of incense that Lei Qiuxing exchanged for the power of the Shimwu dynasty last time might not be comparable to the benefits of this Sumeru world. This was something from another world. Moreover, under the bartender's management, the spiritual energy contained in this Sumeru world had already begun to liquefy. Although the desolate demon realm and void netherworld realm existences could create a Sumeru world as long as they were willing to be ruthless, if they wanted to operate a Sumeru world like the bartender, not only would they need to invest a large amount of resources, but they would also need to invest a very long time. Although the Sumeru world did not have a rating system, this difference still existed. For example, the difference between the Fire Kirin's tomb and this cabin was like the difference between Lin Yuan and an ordinary mountain lord realm Yao beast. The bartender looked around the cabin and smiled. Didn't I say that as long as I think it's suitable? If your answer can satisfy me, then I won't lose out. I ate a strange spiritual object, so my bloodline was purified, turning from a python into a flood dragon. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was very interested in my method of purifying my bloodline, so they cooperated with me and invited me to the West Sea Dragon Palace. However, I didn't have 100% trust in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, so I couldn't just foolishly come to the Endless Sea without leaving any backup plans. Therefore, I had to hurry to the West Sea Dragon Palace in a short period of time, but I didn't know where the Dragon Palace was. If not for the fact that I was worried that the Yao beasts of the Endless Sea were too strong, I would have released my aura and led the Dragon Palace to the outer sea to receive me. But now, it seems that my luck is not bad. I casually caught a Yao beast from the outer sea and found out about your existence. I also obtained the coordinates of the West Sea Dragon Palace from you. Lin Yuan contemplated for a while and decided to tell the truth. His pair of heterochromatic vertical pupils still didn't show any emotion. The smile on the bartender's face slowly faded. He said with a cold voice, I have to say that you're very smart. Although I don't know what bargaining chip you're going to use to force the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, I'm sure that if you didn't prepare anything and stupidly thought that the great beasts of the Dragon Palace wouldn't covet your method, you would be eaten up. Hearing the bartender's words, Lin Yuan's heart sank. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. Although the other party didn't look normal, he had evolved some deformed dragon claws and horns. No matter if it was his power or bloodline, he should be above Lin Yuan's. Before living in the outer sea, this guy should have a high position in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Thus, he should have a full understanding of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If he didn't prepare anything, this trip didn't bode well for him, right? Then here came the problem. Even if Ao Qian was the descendant of a high-level member of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea, could it really compare to the method of purifying the dragon bloodline? With a successful example like Lin Yuan here, not to mention that Ao Qian was only the descendant of a high-level member of the Dragon Palace. Even if she was one of the high-level members of the Dragon Palace, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would probably choose to give up Ao Qian for the benefit of the whole clan. Too careless. Lin Yuan's face suddenly darkened. The deal between you and me is over. The bartender lowered his head again and began to wipe the goblet. He smiled and said, but this time, you're most likely going to fall out with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and even fight. So in a sense, you and I are the same kind. Believe me, if the guys of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas can't get what they want from you, the undersea prison is your only place to go. Speaking of this, he paused, and the inexplicable smile returned to his face. He said in a deep voice, of course, if they get what they want from you, only death awaits you. Because for them, such a secret shouldn't be known by existences other than the direct descendants of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Chapter 646. I don't think they have the guts. The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth cracked, revealing a sinister smile. The dragonization route could indeed purify the dragon clan's bloodline, but this kind of spiritual item could only be produced in the northern frontier. Furthermore, the failure rate was extremely high. After consuming the dragonization route, except for a few lucky ones, almost everyone would turn into a mindless monster. For example, Zhang Xiu was a typical failure. His blood had been changed by Lin Yuan into the cursed seal poison. Although it did not affect his bloodline, there was still dragon blood in his body. After consuming the dragonization route, Zhang Xiu still turned into a monster with poison all over his body. His reason was because he was essentially a human. If he was a real dragon bloodline demonic beast, he would have already turned into a crazy monster. When Lin Yuan took the dragonization route, he almost failed. If it weren't for the system's neutralization, Lin Yuan would have gone crazy the moment the dragonization route's medicinal power dissolved, let alone awakening the underworld black water, which was now a strange talent that allowed him to be on equal terms with the system. He was not sure if this thing really had a chance of successfully purifying the dragon clan's bloodline, but even if it did, the value would not be higher than 2%. If the dragonization route was wantonly promoted in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, Lin Yuan reckoned that the entire Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would go crazy. The rulers of the Endless Sea would directly turn into mindless monsters. Taking a step back, Lin Yuan did not feel that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the ability to bypass him to mine the dragonization route. The Void Netherworld realm and the Desolate Demon realm were not allowed to attack weak cultivators. Although this was an unspoken rule, all the cultivators and demonic beasts in the Sky Martial continent followed it. Perhaps even the true dragons in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas were one of the people who made this unspoken rule. If the other party was a human, Lin Yuan might have to consider that the other party might break the rules. But if it was a demonic beast, Lin Yuan could ignore this point. Because in the conflict between humans and demonic beasts had always been the weaker party. Don't think that just because the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was located in the Endless Sea, those humans could not do anything to them. If demonic beasts were really so powerful, the rulers of the Sky Martial continent would not be humans. Therefore, it was possible for humans to break the unspoken rules, but it was impossible for demonic beasts because they did not have the courage to do so. If this unspoken rule that protected low-level cultivators and demonic beasts was abolished, then the demonic beasts would be the ones to suffer in the end. Even the powerful demonic beasts behind the Hengduan Mountains would not let the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas go, let alone the human cultivators. The tyrannical Lei Qiuxing and the tyrannical Shenwu dynasty from before had all met their end after offending the public. Regardless of whether the otherworldly demons had interfered or not, the Shenwu dynasty was already at the end of its road. This was an indisputable fact. No matter how powerful one's methods and cultivation were, it was impossible to fight against the entire situation by oneself. However, if the top demonic beasts of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did not take action and still wanted to interfere with the operations of the Northern Frontier, or enter the Northern Frontier to extract the dragonization route under the pretext of imprisoning or killing Lin Yuan, then they would be looking down on the Northern Frontier faction that Lin Yuan had single-handedly managed. The Southern Expedition, Northern Garrison, Blackwater, and Falling Star armies, the Association of the Fey Emperor, the Embroidered Uniform Guards, and Yi Busho, whether it was internal or external, as long as they did not directly face existences like the Kongming realm or the Desolate Fey realm, no matter what they encountered, they had the qualifications to meet force with force. Moreover, the Northern Frontier had the strength of the entire Hengduan Mountains as a powerful reinforcement. The other 6 empires would not watch as the demonic beasts of the sea occupied the land. This was also a type of general trend. Ao Qian was what Lin Yuan relied on to ensure that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would not directly turn against him. However, the true reliance was that if Lin Yuan was unwilling to cooperate, even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas knew of the existence of the dragonization route, they could only stand on the side and drool. If they dared to reach out, the Northern Frontier had the ability to cut off their hands. Moreover, Badu had consumed so much Ja's flame power. The title of War God of the Northern Frontier was not just for show, was it? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's aura stabilized slightly. He smiled and said, I don't think the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has the guts. I just don't want to directly turn against them, but that doesn't mean I don't have the strength to do so. The cabin had already begun to fade away. A large amount of spiritual energy was being drawn away by some unknown power. The entire Sumeru world was collapsing. Lin Yuan and the bartender looked at each other in this constantly trembling and collapsing Sumeru world, both wearing an inexplicable smile. The Ja's flame power on the interface was jumping crazily. Lin Yuan's confidence was also increasing. The bartender nodded with a smile and said, It's better not to overestimate the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. They may not have such a long-term vision. Moreover, as the ruler of the Endless Sea for too long, they have forgotten what is called humility and rationality. A big piece of fat meat is placed in front of them. It would be strange if they didn't eat it. You know, greed has never been a monopoly of humans. As his voice fell, the bartender took a step back and his figure faded. He smiled and said, However, I am looking forward to that day. Lin Yuan did not know what the bartender was looking forward to, but when he came back to his senses, he found that the scene around him had changed. It was still the same cabin as before, but there was no rich spiritual energy. Surrounding him was the terrifying pressure of the seawater. The things inside the cabin had begun to rot. It looked like the cabin had been at the bottom of the sea for hundreds of years. If it were not for the fact that there was no trace of life inside the sunken ship, and the Joss flame power on the interface, Lin Yuan would have thought that it was just a dream. Freak. Lin Yuan smiled and shook his head. He separated a strand of divine thought, and controlled the body of the puppet to stand up again. Then he gently patted the beast pouch, and put the main body back into the beast pouch. Only then did he adjust his body and swim out of the hole in the cabin. You're out. I've been waiting for you for a long time. As soon as Lin Yuan came out, he saw Finn waving at him from afar. Although the distance between the two was not short, Lin Yuan could clearly see the shock in Finn's eyes. Obviously, the fact that he was able to leave the Sumeru world was something that shocked Finn. However, it made sense. After all, the bartender in the Sumeru world was a complete lunatic. If Lin Yuan did not have the path of the ancient god, and used another method to obtain information, according to the bartender's original train of thought, whether it was drinking or exchanging information, the possibility of him coming out alive in the end was not high. In other words, if he followed the bartender's train of thought, he would end up as a meal on the bartender's plate. From the moment Finn brought him here, he did not think that he would be able to come out alive. Chapter 647. Don't you feel incredible? Lin Yuan's figure flashed, and he directly appeared in front of Finn. His right hand suddenly stretched out, and he directly grabbed the short neck under the fish's head. In front of Lin Yuan, a wisdom state monster didn't even have the slightest possibility of struggling. It could only constantly twist its body, eager to get more oxygen so that it wouldn't be directly strangled by Lin Yuan. Bang, bang, bang. A few muffled sounds echoed. Lin Yuan only felt a push from behind, causing his body to lean forward. Finn took advantage of this opportunity to shake his head and get out of Lin Yuan's control. At the same time, he swung his snake tail and quickly swept to the side. After all, this sea area was still the Barton clan's hunting ground. Although Finn knew that this outsider's strength was unfathomable, he never thought that the other party could contend with the Sea Demon clan in the sea. Although he didn't leave this place because of Lin Yuan's means, Finn called over many hunters of the Barton clan, ready to kill Lin Yuan at any time. It had to be said that Finn's movement speed underwater was very fast. Even Lin Yuan couldn't clearly capture the other party's trajectory, nor could he capture Barton in the first place. After all, the puppet's body was built to imitate the human body. Although it didn't need to breathe and didn't have any extra organs, it didn't have any physiological needs and could move freely in the sea. However, this didn't mean that this puppet's body could compare to those sea monsters in the sea. Being able to move freely in the sea, and being able to move freely in the sea were still two different concepts. 17 wisdom state monsters dare to provoke me? Opening the eye of the god, Lin Yuan instantly locked onto the surrounding monsters that were hostile to him. It was just that most of the monsters were only hostile to him. However, including Finn, a total of 17 monsters that looked like Nagas were eyeing him covetously. Moreover, they weren't stupid enough to come up and fight him in close combat. Each of them held something similar to a musket in their hands. The inexplicable thrust just now should have come from this kind of weapon, and its power was not much. Although this level of attack could be ignored on his body, it still had a lot of lethality on the body of the puppet. Through the eye of God, he could clearly see several dents on the puppet's back. One must know that this puppet's body was made of various precious metals, and the scales that he had shed before. Even a shape-shifting demon beast like Ning Tiansheng could not break his defense. So far, apart from Zhao Xiang's calm disturbance, only the weapons in the hands of these Nagas could cause the puppet's body to deform. This level of damage meant that if these musket-like weapons were to launch a sneak attack on someone, even a Mountain Lord level Yao beast would be in danger. Ocean demon beasts were indeed not to be underestimated. Not only did they develop their own social class, but even their own technology tree had also made some progress. In this regard, the monsters in the Hengduan mountain range were at least 2 to 3 generations behind the monsters in the ocean. Outsider, I advise you not to be so aggressive. Although I am no match for you in the ocean, Yao beasts are the kings. Even if your cultivation is not bad and you can move freely in the ocean, you are still no match for us, Finn said coldly. He shook his body and said coldly, I will give you a chance. Leave the Barton clan's territory now, and we can pretend that nothing happened. If you continue to be stubborn, we will kill you in this ocean even if we have to risk our lives. I will also give you a chance. Come and accept your death or else. You won't be the only one to die. Lin Yuan stood in place and looked coldly at Barton. His voice was filled with disdain. The weapons in the opponent's hands were indeed powerful, but it was still a joke if they thought they could threaten the puppet's body. Unless there were hundreds of such muskets and they could fire 5 to 7 rounds continuously, only then would it be possible to completely destroy the puppet's body. Otherwise, with the puppet's regenerative ability, it wouldn't take long for a few small dents to completely recover. However, Lin Yuan did not believe that the opponent had so many guns. If these guns were ordinary goods, there would definitely be more than 17 Nagas here. Moreover, the opponent's attack frequency would not pause for a moment. In any case, if it were Lin Yuan doing this, he would definitely not stop until the opponent had no strength to fight back. You are courting death. Despicable outsider. Do you know you are? Finn's face darkened, and his gloomy gaze fell on Lin Yuan's face. However, before he could finish speaking, a Naga appeared beside him and interrupted him, whispering a few words in his ear. Finn hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand hatefully and roared, "Retreat!" As soon as his voice fell, the 17 Nagas swayed their snake tails and quickly disappeared from the sea. This outsider was too strange. The previous round of salvo was already a very high expenditure for a force like the Barton family. However, it was like reaching out and gently pushing this outsider, not causing much damage at all. Continuing to fight would be meaningless to it. At the very least, none of the methods it could use right now could threaten this outsider. And no matter if it was dispatching the outsider now or luring him to the Barton family's residence, it would be far too dangerous for it. It could only find another opportunity to kill this outsider next time. I've given you a chance. Don't regret it next time we meet. Lin Yuan grinned, revealing 2 rows of white metal teeth. Now was not the time to expose his true body. If it was on land, these Naga monsters would never be able to escape from his hands. However, he could only take the long view. Compared to dealing with these Naga monsters, it was more important to rush to the West Sea Dragon Palace first. His eyes closed slightly, and his divine sense spread out in all directions. Soon Lin Yuan chose a direction and rushed towards it. The undercurrent under the extremely strong pressure was easily torn apart by him. It was not until Lin Yuan completely disappeared that the bartender, who had changed into a golden robe, walked out of the sunken ship. A pair of golden vertical pupils stared in the direction where Lin Yuan disappeared. There was still an inexplicable smile on his face. The opener of the new era. Interesting. I hope those idiots in the Dragon Palace won't do anything too excessive. Otherwise, it will be difficult for everyone to get out of the embarrassing situation. As soon as he finished speaking, the bartender took a step back and his body exploded. A strong undercurrent appeared in the original area. In the end, everything returned to calm as if nothing had happened. Chapter 648. Half a month later, Lin Yuan stopped in front of a dazzling crystal palace, his dark eyes slightly narrowed. The blood jade corals, which were rarely seen on land, grew like wild weeds in front of this crystal palace. Any one of them could instantly overshadow the treasures of the so-called nobles on land. The crystals that made up the main body of the crystal palace were also not simple. Even from tens of thousands of meters away, he could clearly feel the rich spiritual energy flowing in those crystals. Occasionally, when the spiritual energy flowed, the light and shadow it brought along was enough to intoxicate people. The white floor tiles stretched all the way into the crystal palace, but Lin Yuan was very clear that they were not jade stones, but spiritual stones. Spiritual energy that had truly materialized was different from the vaporized or liquefied spiritual energy that Lin Yuan had seen before. Spiritual energy that had truly condensed into a substance, and could even be used to hurt people like ordinary bricks. Any piece of spiritual energy that was brought to the world on land would attract a large number of human merchants to buy it frantically. It could even directly set off a bloody storm. Even before entering this so-called Dragon Palace of the West Sea, Lin Yuan could already feel what it meant to have a solid foundation from the other side. It was hard to say whether the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was really as powerful as it was rumored to be, but the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was definitely richer than the rumors. The periphery of the Dragon Palace was not empty. Pairs of sea demon beasts patrolled back and forth. They were not all snakes, pythons, flood dragons, or dragons, but all kinds of sea creatures that could be seen here. There were even some freaks that were similar to the indescribable creatures in his previous life. However, Lin Yuan could easily feel that these demon beasts contained the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. In fact, Lin Yuan was able to arrive at the Crystal Palace safely because of the flood dragon bloodline in his body. Although these dragon bloodline demon beasts looked different from each other, there was no doubt that as long as they had the bloodline of the Dragon Clan, any kind of creature could stay here without being attacked. It did not even matter if they had any problems. As long as they asked, they would be helped. However, this kind of friendliness was only for dragon bloodline demon beasts. When Lin Yuan first entered the deep sea area, he saw some demon beasts that did not have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan, or sea demon beasts that had not developed intelligence, mistakenly entering the deep sea area. They were instantly attracted to powerful dragon bloodline demon beasts, who directly tore them to pieces without any explanation. Sorry, only the dragon race of the Four Seas can enter the Crystal Palace. A humanoid demon beast with a crab head raised the steel blade in its hand and blocked Lin Yuan's path. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows imperceptibly, but he sneered in his heart. It seems that the dragon race of the Four Seas and the Dragon Palace are not really close. Just as they reject the outer sea monsters, the dragon race of the Four Seas also rejects these dragon blood monsters who only have the blood of the dragon race, but do not have the identity of the dragon race. The cold hierarchical system is here. For Lin Yuan, who has received an equal education in his previous life, there is an inexplicable urge to vomit. Although he was not a saint, he never believed in fairness. In other words, if two people with different statuses were still at the same starting line, that would be truly unfair. However, not following blindly didn't mean that Lin Yuan could accept everything in front of him, because the so-called Dragon Clan of the Four Seas might not be as powerful as these Dragon Palace species in the outer region. Just because they had the bloodline of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, they seemed to be a level higher than all living creatures in the world. For such a cooperative partner, Lin Yuan doubted whether the two sides could have a friendly meeting. I was invited by the West Sea Dragon King. You can call me Blackwater Dragon King, or the Lord of the Northern Frontier. Lin Yuan's voice was extremely calm, but it instantly attracted the gazes and attention of countless Dragon Palace species. The title Dragon King was a commonplace title for humans. It seemed that any powerful aquatic demon beast could win the title of Dragon King from the mouths of the humans near the water, which indirectly made this title worthless and vulgar. However, that was only for humans. Just like what Ning Tianxing said, when these humans called the powerful aquatic demon beast Dragon King, they never considered the face of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the real Dragon King. However, whether it was because of the unspoken rules or other reasons, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely not do anything to those humans who even had to rely on worshipping aquatic demon beasts to survive. However, it didn't mean that they wouldn't take care of those demon beasts called Dragon King. Therefore, the title Dragon King still belonged to the top of the food chain among the real aquatic demon beasts. These demon beasts even had to have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. Otherwise, they would still be attacked by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Now, an outsider who looked similar to a human was openly calling himself Blackwater Dragon King. In front of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea, the Crab General's face sank slightly, as if he was offended. He turned the steel saber in his hand and directly slashed at Lin Yuan's chest. Lin Yuan slid his feet and swam back 30 feet, dodging the steel saber and demon power of the Crab General. Only then did he slowly raise his head and say, "I've experienced the hospitality of the Dragon Palace. Didn't you call yourself Blackwater Dragon King?" I'm just trying to see if you have the qualifications to call yourself king. The crab general took a step forward, his face still gloomy. The steel saber in his hand continued to slash at Lin Yuan. For the dragon clan of the Four Seas, Dragon King was the title of supreme ruler. Whether this outsider was invited by the Dragon Palace or not, since he dared to call himself Dragon King in front of the Dragon Palace, he should be prepared to receive the attacks of the Dragon Palace. Dang. This time, Lin Yuan didn't continue to dodge. He very calmly faced the steel saber of the crab general, and used his puppet body to receive the attack, producing a metallic clang. The next moment, Lin Yuan's right hand left an afterimage and grabbed the crab general's face. He said coldly, "You think you are qualified?" Perhaps he wasn't qualified to call himself Dragon King, at least not with his current strength. However, as the ruler of the Northern Frontier and the supreme god of the entire Northern Frontier divine system, Lin Yuan's future achievements might be above those of the few true dragons of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even now, he was an existence that was on par with the true Dragon King. A dog of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea was qualified to test if he had the qualifications to call himself Dragon King? With regards to the crab general's actions, Lin Yuan couldn't be bothered to guess. Anyway, he was sure that the crab general's actions were ordered by the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. After all, the guards of the Dragon Palace weren't positions that just anyone could take up. They didn't need to be very strong because the subordinates of the Dragon Palace and the internal guards of the Dragon Palace could deliver fatal blows to intruders. The guards standing at the main entrance had to be well-informed and eloquent. The meaning of their existence wasn't to guard, but to make the first contact with visitors and determine if they had the qualifications to enter the Crystal Palace. Chapter 649. The image of a gatekeeper had to be mighty. At the very least, they had to be able to intimidate a portion of those with evil intentions. They had to give visitors a good impression of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Then they could use information and flattery to deepen their goodwill or dispel their malice. In the eyes of others, the most important aspect of a gatekeeper was one of the most unnecessary factors. Any slightly higher-ranked faction would not nurture a gatekeeper that was like an idiot. A peak existence like the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely not make such a foolish mistake. Thus, it was impossible for this crab general not to know what it meant to be the master of the Northern Frontier. It was also impossible for him not to know that he had been invited here by the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. But at this moment, the crab general still chose to draw his blade. He even arrogantly said that he wanted to see if Lin Yuan had the qualifications to be called a king. These words did not seem to have gone through his brain, even though his crab head probably did not have much brain capacity. But as a peak wisdom realm monster that could step into the Mountain Lord realm at any time, the crab general's actions were rather thought-provoking. With the intelligence of a normal human, they would not do such a foolish thing, unless it was ordered by the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. That Dragon King of the West Sea had probably planned to use a series of arrangements to erase the so-called Blackwater Dragon King before meeting Lin Yuan. Then he would communicate with him in a lofty manner. If not for the fact that the attitude of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was related to Lin Yuan's subsequent plans, he would have really turned around and left. You're not too lucky, because with my temper, I would have turned around and left. But unfortunately, I can't. Lin Yuan's right hand was like a metal pincer, tightly gripping the crab general's face. He coldly said, "So I plan to collect some interest and also show off my strength. Tell those colleagues behind you that if they are not prepared to enter the Netherworld River, they should not provoke me." As soon as the words left his mouth, the right palm of the puppet's body suddenly split open. Clusters of black liquid gushed out from the bone pipe and instantly covered the entire crab general. Without even letting out a scream, the crab general turned into a mass of black liquid and was absorbed back into the hole in the right palm as though it had never appeared in the first place. After doing all this, Lin Yuan's right palm slowly healed. At the same time, he raised his head and looked at the other gatekeeper. "Now, should I go in directly, or should I wait for you to go in and report? Or do you want to follow in its footsteps?" The other gatekeeper wasn't a shrimp soldier, but an octopus the size of a grown man's head. It was also a humanoid creature. Although it looked a little silly, the octopus head had 4 pairs of eyes, which made it look strangely ferocious. The octopus head fell silent for a moment before coldly saying, "Wait a moment." Then, it turned around and walked into the crystal palace. No life form could resist the threat of death. Even those who thought they were unafraid of death would be scared to the point of tears when they truly faced death. Moreover, Lin Yuan had only extended his hand and pressed down, instantly killing a crab general at the level of a river lord. He didn't even leave behind a corpse or remains. It was as if half of the crab general had evaporated into thin air. The scene was extremely strange. It didn't even want to die, let alone die without a complete corpse. Lin Yuan stood in front of the crystal palace with his arms crossed. He waited for half an hour before the octopus head poked out again. Its voice was still cold and hard. "Come in with me." Lin Yuan yawned. He didn't put on airs. With 2 steps, he crossed the distance of tens of meters and directly appeared in front of the octopus head. Then he walked into the crystal palace with it. Around him were glowing crystals. Under his feet were jade stones that were constantly emitting tremendous spiritual energy. On both sides of the path were all kinds of precious marine specialties. Even the rare minerals that only existed in human books and extinct spiritual items could be found here. Moreover, they were not the kind of exhibits that were made into specimens. It was as if space had been cut apart. All kinds of spiritual items that grew in different environments were growing freely in this crystal palace, without any signs of discomfort. Although he was mentally prepared, Lin Yuan still couldn't help but exclaim, "The Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas was really rich." If any of the exhibits here were brought to the world on the continent, even if they were sold in the black market where the commission was serious, one could easily become as rich as a country. It was estimated that in the best years of the Shenwu dynasty, even the treasures in the national treasury might not be enough to buy any of the exhibits here. They might not even be able to buy the wild blood jade corals outside. For the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas, the value of these precious objects seemed to be just ordinary decorations. No wonder those powerful guys in the prehistoric myths liked to borrow weapons from existences like the Dragon King. Perhaps those guys didn't really want something at the beginning, but were naturally attracted by something after they came to the Dragon Palace. However, what really made them make this decision was the wealth of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas itself. Even if they were in a different world, with a group of mediocre dragons, they would still be as rich. After walking for about an hour along the long and luxurious path, the octopus head slowly stopped. It reached out and pointed at a vermilion door beside it and said, "This door is made of precious minerals from the bottom of the sea. Its exact weight is still a mystery, but one thing is certain. If your strength is less than 1,000,000 pounds, you will never be able to open this door." At this point, it paused and said in a joking tone, "The Dragon King is waiting for you inside." Good heavens, here comes the second show of strength. If your strength is less than 1,000,000 pounds, you don't even have the right to see the Dragon King? The title of the Dragon King did indeed belong to the King of the Endless Sea, and the leader of the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas. However, the title of the Dragon King did not necessarily belong to the few true dragons who had not been born. Although the Dragon Clan had a very long lifespan and extraordinary strength as soon as they reached adulthood, the top forces couldn't restrict the strength of the Dragon King like they did with the human dynasties, because this kind of creature was very likely to have a great increase in strength after waking up. Therefore, the top forces could only request that the Dragon King must be replaced every 200 years. This was a very harsh number because 200 years was not long for a race with a long lifespan. The time that could allow an ordinary human to live for 2 lifetimes was pitifully little for the Dragon Clan. If there was no external interference, they could usually easily fall asleep. Therefore, most of the Dragon King unknowingly became the Dragon King in their sleep, and unknowingly abdicated to become an ordinary dragon. Of course, there were a few who were addicted to power and forced themselves not to sleep to finish their term. Chapter 650. How interesting. Lin Yuan looked at the vermilion door in front of him and sneered. As a guest invited by the West Sea Dragon Palace, do I have to open the door personally? It seems like the so-called dragon race of the 4 Seas isn't as elegant as the rumors say. Anyone with normal intelligence could tell that Lin Yuan was trying to provoke him, including the octopus head beside him. However, the dragon race of the Four Seas did fall for it. Although they weren't like some extremists who believed that other races shouldn't exist in this world, they did believe that their bloodline was incomparably noble, and that they should be born as nobles and rulers. Therefore, when someone questioned this point, the dragon race of the Four Seas would maintain the deepest level of malice towards the person who questioned them. They would even oppose all the actions of the other party. The octopus had reached out with a sullen face and slowly pushed open the vermilion door for Lin Yuan. From the beginning to the end, its face didn't look too good. Lin Yuan sneered in his heart. A strength of 1,000,000 kilograms wasn't difficult for a Heaven's Strength realm cultivator. Although it wasn't an average value, pushing open the door was as easy as flipping one's hand with a burst of earth chi and a certain strength exertion technique. It would be even easier if one had a method like endurance training. It was even less difficult for a monster. A mountain lord monster could easily reach a strength of 1,000,000 kilograms. Every small breakthrough would cause the monster's strength to increase rapidly. Therefore, this door shouldn't have been used as a show of strength from the beginning. It wasn't difficult at all. The West Sea Dragon Palace insisted on doing this just to humiliate him. Unfortunately, the current Lin Yuan didn't have a strength of 1,000,000 kilograms. In other words, the body of a puppet wasn't enough to inherit such a high strength. Therefore, if Lin Yuan were to push open the door himself, he would be helpless unless he directly released his main body. However, if it wasn't necessary, it obviously wouldn't be the best choice. That was because he had a total of 2 beast pouches. Before he had enough confidence to kill his way out of the West Sea Dragon Palace alone, it wouldn't be a wise move to expose the existence of the beast pouches. After all, Ao Qian was one of his trump cards. Whether or not it was useful, it would at least be a way out or a buffer. It wouldn't cause the two sides to fall out or make things too awkward. But once the beast pouch was exposed, the opponent would quickly realize that Ao Qian was in the other beast pouch on him. Clearly, since Lin Yuan had ill intentions towards the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he would have prepared a backup plan. Whether it was allowing Ao Qian to continue her activities on the northern frontier, or letting Ao Qian lead the way for him, it was clear that they could not threaten the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. They could even easily get in touch with Ao Qian through the Wei River. The safest way was to temporarily imprison Ao Qian, and bring her by his side at all times. Only then could he eliminate the possibility of the Four Seas dragon race bypassing Lin Yuan, and directly coming into contact with Ao Qian. He would not directly play a game of death. As the Vermilion Gate slowly opened, Lin Yuan also saw a figure wearing a lavender robe. It had a tall and sturdy figure similar to King Piccolo and green scales all over its body. It was also an existence that stood like the bartender, but its evolution was obviously higher than the bartender's. Its golden horns and 5 dragon claws showed its extraordinariness. What was even more frightening was that the other party did not emit any aura, but it directly suppressed Lin Yuan's passive skill, Dragon's Might. Just like the Hulk in the movies, no matter how Lin Yuan brewed his emotions to summon or use his skills, he still could not release Dragon's Might from his body. This feeling was similar to when Lin Yuan was still an ordinary black snake and bumped into an old dragon snake. It was just that he did not have the feeling of wanting to surrender and not daring to resist. However, Lin Yuan was not sure if this was because he was no longer the same as before and was immune to the bloodline pressure, or because the other party deliberately restrained its aura and did not intend to make Lin Yuan kneel down in front of it on the spot. However, what Lin Yuan could be sure of was that the other party was very strong, even stronger than the bartender he had seen before. Its evolution and bloodline density were also far above the bartender's. Even the bartender with the support of Sumeru World might not be able to last more than 3 moves against it. In any case, this guy should be the most powerful existence Lin Yuan had seen so far. Where's my child? As soon as the Dragonborn opened its mouth, it asked a question that Lin Yuan did not expect at all. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment and did not answer the Dragonborn's question. Instead, he asked in return, "Do you really want to know?" He was not too sure about this guy's origins. After all, its strength might be far above the desolate demon realm, But it was completely different from the image of the true dragon in his bloodline memory. As for the child it mentioned, it was most likely referring to Ao Qian. This was because Lin Yuan had never come into contact with the other dragon tribes of the Four Seas. When Lin Yuan's voice fell, he felt a suffocating feeling. When he lowered his head, he found that his neck had been wrapped around a golden hemp rope. Moreover, this hemp rope seemed to have a strange power. It was not strangling the neck of the puppet body, because the puppet body did not need to breathe. Even if it broke the neck, Lin Yuan would not feel the slightest bit of discomfort, let alone strangling the throat. What this hemp rope was imprisoning was his divine sense. Looks like you're very smart. You don't have much trust in the dragon palace of the Four Seas. The dragonborn shrugged and said indifferently, "You're right. I really don't want to know the answer to that question just now. I'm just asking as a father. Whether you're willing to tell me or not is your problem. I feel that we should leave a way out for each other. Even if we can't come to an agreement in the end, we won't completely fall out with each other. That's your plan, right?" "Yes." Almost without thinking, he replied. Lin Yuan's black eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of seriousness. Because when he replied, Lin Yuan did not even have time to think. His body instinctively responded truthfully. This was simply inconceivable to Lin Yuan. Although he was not a hypocrite who was full of lies, in the Tianmu continent where the strong preyed on the weak, righteous and honest emotions would only bring him endless trouble and even destruction. Therefore, weighing the pros and cons of a sentence several times before saying it had already become a habit that Lin Yuan had engraved in the depths of his soul. Clearly, there was a problem with this rope that was restraining his divine sense. And the problem was very big. With this thing around his neck, it seemed like he would unknowingly speak the truth, and it was the kind that did not give him any chance to react. Chapter 651. He was being controlled by some kind of strange treasure, and he could not help but speak the truth. This was not a good feeling. Even Lin Yuan could not control his malice at this moment. Even though he could not release his dragon power, the strange malice still spread from his puppet body, causing the dragonoid standing opposite Lin Yuan to shake uncomfortably. It seems that the dragon palace of the Four Seas is very different from what the rumors say, but the only thing I can be sure of is that you are very arrogant. Lin Yuan stretched out his hand and pulled the rope around his neck. His eyes were terrifyingly cold. I don't think that this way of communication is suitable for you and me, and I don't think that you are making some mutually beneficial deal with me. Huh. The dragonoid let out a strange huh, and said doubtfully, "It seems that you who call yourself the Dragon King are not very smart. Do you think that the weak northern frontier under your command is the same as the Great Dragon Palace? Whether it is the sky demon that gives you a headache, or the Shimwu dynasty of the past, they are all ridiculously weak in front of the Dragon Palace. Even the Hengduan Mountains behind you are just a prodigal dog in my eyes." At this point, it tugged at the rope in its hand and sneered. "You have noble dragon blood, so I can make an exception and accept you as a member of the dragon clan of the Four Seas. However, this does not mean that you have the right to negotiate with the Dragon Palace." Lin Yuan was silent, but the malice released from his body was more than enough. The sneer on the dragonoid's face did not diminish, because the malice released from Lin Yuan was one thing, and whether Lin Yuan could put this malice into practice was another thing. The two sides were not equal from the beginning, because the northern frontier was indeed a weak and small force to the Dragon Palace. Even the Shimwu dynasty in its heyday could not do anything about the demon beast invasion along the coast, let alone a force that occupied less than 1/5 of the Shimwu dynasty's territory. Now answer my question. As far as I know, you used to be a snake-type demon beast without any dragon blood in your body, but within a short period of time, you turned into a pure-blooded flood dragon. Such a change cannot be explained by atavism or evolution. So, how did you purify your bloodline and turn yourself into a flood dragon? Black Jiao, I admit that you have some skills to be able to occupy human territory as a demon beast, and have the shadow of the ancient demon court behind you. But the demon court has fallen, and even if there are remnants, they are very weak compared to the Dragon Palace. If you are willing to cooperate with me, I can allow you to marry Ao Qian and become a member of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. For you, this is a supreme honor. Now that they had a treasure that could make their target speak the truth, the Dragonborn naturally skipped the unnecessary pleasantries and roping them in. The dragon clan of the Four Seas coveted the method that Lin Yuan mastered to purify his bloodline. At the same time, they also coveted the territory that Lin Yuan controlled. From the moment the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas sent an invitation to Lin Yuan's outcome was already decided. Other than becoming a son-in-law of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, marrying the son of a certain high-ranking member of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, and then being imprisoned in an underwater prison for the rest of his life, the only path left was death. In front of an absolute advantage, the Dragonoid did not need to put on any pretense. They could directly imprison Lin Yuan and slowly pry open this Black Jiao's mouth, handing over everything that they coveted to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. In time, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely transcend the secular world and become an absolute overlord. Even if the Guardians of the Heavenly Gates joined forces, they would not be able to compete with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. As for whether Lin Yuan would cooperate or not, although the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was willing to admit their greed, they did not forget that this fellow was a troublesome thorn. Thus, they did not intend to settle the problem through peaceful negotiations. Lin Yuan did not immediately answer this question. Instead, he remained silent. However, the Dragonoid did not know if it was an illusion, but it could vaguely see a deep smile in Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes. Conceited and ignorant, ugly and greedy. I feel that this evaluation is the most appropriate description for both you and the so-called Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan spoke with a smile in his voice. I can answer part of your question. My method of purifying the bloodline of the Dragon Clan is actually very simple. This is because I have consumed a strange spiritual item that most likely does not belong to this world. It may also be a spiritual item that this world has developed in order to complete itself. However, this spiritual item is extremely powerful, and even the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas may not be able to withstand its power. The price of failure is complete madness, becoming a creature that is even more ferocious and strange than the Inferno demon beasts. According to what I know, many creatures have consumed it, but I am the only one who has succeeded. Do you really want this method of purifying your bloodline? Lin Yuan had made many speculations about the existence of the dragonization root. At first, he had thought that the dragonization root was some spiritual item from the great desolate world. However, this was clearly not the case. This was because the dragonization root could indeed purify one's bloodline, but it did not necessarily target dragon bloodline demon beasts. It was only because the Dragon Clan's bloodline was powerful, and the Dragon Clan did not seem to have any reproductive isolation. They could mate with all living things and give birth to offspring. This allowed dragon bloodline demon beasts to have greater compatibility, so they could withstand the dragonization root's side effects to the greatest extent. A spiritual item that could purify one's bloodline, even in the great desolate world where big shots roamed everywhere, was definitely something that could only be chanced upon by luck. However, this treasure had not been recorded in any of the countless legends and biographies. This was clearly abnormal. Even if those legends and biographies were missing or damaged, as the system of the will of the heavenly Tao, it was impossible for it not to recognize this item. Thus, it was very clear that the dragonization root was actually a spiritual item that this world had developed on its own. The so-called purifying of one's bloodline was only an extremely minor use of the dragonization root. To be more precise, the dragonization root did not purify one's bloodline. Instead, it allowed the user to evolve in all aspects, allowing them to become an existence of a higher level. For example, God. The dragonization root's existence was to allow a lucky person to obtain the power of the nether realm's black water after consuming it. After a long period of precipitation, it would allow this incomplete world to create one of the three realms of heaven, earth, and man. In other words, this world then used its own method to perfect itself, wanting to create the nether god, and then use its power to create the underworld. The owner of that cave abode might not have known what the dragonization root was, but he was very clear that this item contained great karma. Thus, he kept a respectful distance from the dragonization root. Now, it seemed that Lin Yuan was that lucky person. However, he was not the lucky person chosen by this world. Chapter 652. After figuring this out, Lin Yuan quickly realized why there was a carrier of laws chasing after him. It was because he was not the god of the underworld chosen by this world. His roots were not in the Tianwu continent. Even if he created his own underworld one day, it would eventually belong to the world of his previous life. This action was the same as directly using a knife to cut the flesh of this world. The appearance of a spirit item of this level, even if it was the will of this world, would have to pay a heavy price. From the way the system hoped that its host could become an existence that could compete with Hongjun, it could only slowly strengthen him. Through various transactions, it could be seen that everything in this world did not appear for no reason. And this world had paid a heavy price to help an outsider. It was reasonable for it to chase after Lin Yuan in anger. However, it was very obvious that a spirit item that could transform an ordinary creature into a god would have to pay a heavy price to exist in this world. Theoretically, everything in this world did not happen without reason. If one wanted to obtain it, they had to pay a price. In order to become the god of the underworld, after consuming the dragonization root, one would have to endure the corresponding backlash during the evolution process. However, there did not seem to be any creature in this world that could endure this backlash. Therefore, other than Lin Yuan, everyone who consumed the dragonization root had become monsters without exception. Even Lin Yuan was actually a failure. He was also unable to endure the complete evolution power of the dragonization root. It was only because of the system's intervention that he successfully completed the evolution. However, he stopped at the level of a flood dragon, and did not become the god of the underworld that this world's will wanted. His success was not because he could endure the backlash of the dragonization root. It was because during the evolution process, the system had already estimated the limit that Lin Yuan could endure. It had intervened at the critical point, and expelled the excess evolution power from Lin Yuan's body. According to the Xuanhuan novels in his previous life, this should be a clash between the wills of two worlds. As the heavenly Tao of the primordial world, the system was definitely stronger than the Tianwu continent's will. However, the heavenly Tao was stolen by Hongjun. It was just an incomplete body. Therefore, the clash between the two sides did not have a clear victor. The dragonization root still affected Lin Yuan. With the power of the underworld's black water, Lin Yuan had another choice. This caused Lin Yuan to break free from the system's control and become an equal trader. He was not a puppet that could be abandoned at any time after completing the system's goal. Therefore, this was a situation where both sides suffered losses. The only one who had an advantage was Lin Yuan as the battlefield. Looks like my trip to the Western Sea Dragon Palace was not without benefits. Lin Yuan opened his mouth and showed a smile that was even more ferocious than that of a demon beast. In his mind, a crazy and daring thought was brewing. The dragonman's green vertical pupils contracted slightly. Half. This was different from what it expected. More importantly, Lin Yuan's answer was not wrong. However, it was not the straightforward truth. On the contrary, Lin Yuan's words contained a deep sense of mockery and ridicule. It was as if it had unknowingly made a huge mistake. What about the other half? The dragon man pursed its lips and asked subconsciously. You. Lin Yuan maintained his sinister smile as he looked at the dragon man. Do you really want to know? Gulp. The dragon man swallowed his saliva. His expression was not good. Subconsciously, he wanted to give an affirmative answer, but he had a premonition that there was a great terror behind this question. The stronger a demonic beast was, the stronger its sense of danger was. Just like how ordinary creatures could always foresee natural disasters, a flood dragon like Lin Yuan had prepared one after another before heading south to the Western Sea Dragon Palace. A top demonic beast like the Dragon Man would naturally have a more terrifying premonition than Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan and the Dragon Man were not the only ones who knew about this conversation. There were countless pairs of eyes in the Western Sea Dragon Palace staring at them. The moment it sensed the warning, it even felt that it might have gone crazy. It was as if the Dragon Man only needed to nod his head slightly, and the entire Western Sea Dragon Palace would vanish. Do you feel danger? Lin Yuan maintained his sinister smile as he said word by word, "Don't be confused. Your premonition is real." The dragonman's expression changed. It looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. For a moment, it forgot what to say. Intuition was a possibility that all creatures had. It could instinctively sense danger, but it did not mean that other creatures could also sense this danger. But looking at Lin Yuan's reaction, it was as if he already knew all of this. He also knew that if he answered this question, the Western Sea Dragon Palace would be destroyed. It suddenly panicked. In its long life, it had seen countless powerful enemies. There were humans from the land, demonic beasts, and many indescribable creatures in the deep sea. It had even seen many creatures on the other side of the Heaven's Gate. According to the words of the dragon ancestors, it seemed that outside the Sky Martial continent, there were many more terrifying existences. But it had never seen such a strange existence like Lin Yuan, a demonic beast that had not even reached the desolate demonic realm. It had not even been 2 years since he was born, and he had casually created countless miracles. Who knew how many pairs of greedy eyes stared at Lin Yuan, hoping to bite off a piece of meat from Lin Yuan? But it was obvious that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was the first force to make a move on Lin Yuan. But with just a simple question, the shadow of destruction had enveloped the Western Sea Dragon Palace. Now let me ask you one last time. Do you want to know what the other half is? Lin Yuan's voice suddenly became low and hoarse. It was as if a devil from hell was whispering into a human's ear, tempting a human to fall into depravity for his own desires. The dragon man subconsciously wanted to nod its head, but it was instantly jolted awake. It roared, "No, I don't want to know." For some reason, when it said those words, the dragon man inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief. That was because the great terror in the dark had disappeared at that moment, as if nothing had happened. It was only at that moment that it realized that its light purple robe had been completely soaked by the seawater. It was laughable because dragons didn't have sweat glands on their bodies. However, that momentary lapse in concentration still caused the surrounding seawater to soak its light purple robe, making it look even more pathetic than if it had been drenched in cold sweat from fright. Chapter 653. What a pity. The smile on Lin Yuan's face gradually faded. The power of the system was very strong. Even if it was damaged, it was still a heavenly Tao-level existence. Killing a group of desolate demon realm monsters was a piece of cake for it. However, the system had its limitations. Before the rules were violated, it could not directly interfere with the operation of the world, unless its opponent was in existence on the same level as it. Inquiring about or confirming the system's existence would be a violation of the rules. Once the Draconids had nodded to delve into the matter, everyone, including the listeners who might exist, would face the system's wrath head-on, and it would not be impossible for them to destroy the entire Western Sea Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan no longer had a good impression of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if they were mutants from the primeval world, they were not worthy of Lin Yuan's special treatment. In the absence of true dragons, the so-called dragon race might not even compare to the mysterious incubus. The system's existence should be a mystery. Even the true dragons of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas might not know. Or perhaps they had reached a tacit understanding with the system to remain silent. Otherwise, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would not treat Lin Yuan like this. However, the true dragons might not know about the system, but a desolate demon realm beast master Kirin of the Hungduan Mountains knew about it. Regardless of how far the incubus had walked on the path of cultivation, known as the desolate demon realm, it might not be as powerful as a cultivator of a higher level if they really fought. Yet the system could not do anything to the incubus. Under the incubus' little trick, the system could no longer freely explore Lin Yuan's heart. It could hear Lin Yuan's thoughts, but 80% of them were fabricated by Lin Yuan, while the remaining 20% were deliberately made up by Lin Yuan. Ignoring power and cultivation. In terms of value, befriending the incubus might be more beneficial than befriending the entire Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. As soon as he finished speaking, the rope tied around Lin Yuan's neck broke inch by inch and fell to the ground like an ordinary hemp rope. The dragonoid's face instantly darkened. Even if it did not speak, Lin Yuan could imagine that this kind of treasure that could make people involuntarily speak the truth was definitely not simple. It was possible that this rope came from the untainted world, but it should not have reached the level of a primordial magic treasure. However, among the acquired magic treasures, it was one of the best. After all, in terms of the law of causality, it could make people involuntarily speak the truth. It was almost equivalent to the copper coin of treasure fall, which could make all the treasures in the world fall. It was just that this kind of thing could not be used against the enemy, so its rating was slightly lower. The treasure was indeed not bad, but it had chosen the wrong opponent. Was the heavenly Tao something that anyone could pry into? The dragon man remained silent for a moment with a gloomy expression, but in the end he did not explode with anger. He stepped forward and sat down on a coral throne. His green eyes coldly sized up Lin Yuan as he said coldly, "You mean, you don't actually have the means to purify your bloodline at all, and you were able to evolve into a WYRM dragon purely, because you were lucky, right?" Lin Yuan smiled and nodded. Without that strange rope, there was no need for him to speak at all. In fact, it would be best if he did not speak. He had destroyed a treasure that could be said to be of the best quality. If the two of them were in different positions, it would not be a great profit, but if there were no benefits that could make up for the loss in the end, then the existence that destroyed the treasure would definitely not have a good ending. However, the dragon man suppressed his anger and did not flare up on the spot. It was very clear that since it already knew that Lin Yuan's success could not be replicated, and that even if it succeeded, it would have to pay a huge price, it still did not label Lin Yuan as a dead man. Instead, it showed that it was willing to continue the discussion. This meant that the dragon man still had a deep fear of Lin Yuan. This fear might have come from the ancient demon court behind Lin Yuan, who did not know if it existed or not. It might also have come from the great terror it sensed when it asked the question just now. "Then do you think you can return to the northern frontier in one piece?" The dragon man was so angry that he laughed and asked Lin Yuan in a cold voice. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was undoubtedly one of the top forces in the world. The so-called sea monsters were no different from the land monsters. They were all existences that were struggling at death's door under the human army. Once the seemingly powerful outer sea monsters lost the protection of the sea, they might not be able to fight against the land monsters that had fought against the humans for many years in the Hengduan Mountains. However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was a force that was independent of the monster system. Although the few true dragon ancestors had not been born, they were experts that could make the guardians of the Heavenly Gate, who stood at the top of the world, avoid. Regardless of whether it was in terms of foundation or strength, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had enough confidence to start a war with any force on the Tianwu continent. Lin Yuan crossed his arms in front of his chest and said expressionlessly, "I'm afraid that regardless of whether you can extract benefits from me or not, you won't let me return to the northern frontier, unless..." At this point, a mocking smile appeared on Lin Yuan's face. "The demon court will attack and beat you until you're afraid. Only then will you have no choice but to respectfully send me back." The dragon man did not reply, but he did not hide the shock on his face. What kind of existence was the ancient demon court? It was a powerful force formed by itinerant cultivators and monsters from the primordial world. Even though it was not inferior to Hongjun and his lackeys, it was impossible for it to be a weakling to be able to work together to shatter the primordial world and hide in the endless sea of bitterness when Hongjun occupied the 4-9 heavenly Daos. The few dragon ancestors that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas relied on the most were just cats and dogs on the periphery of the ancient demon court. Otherwise, when the ancient demon court was destroyed, the few dragon ancestors would not have been able to survive. However, what happened back then? The ancient demon court, which was so powerful that it was invincible, quietly collapsed. One by one, the top experts fell and fled. They either did not have any corpses left or disappeared without a trace. Today, the ancient demon court had even become one of the inheritances that had been destroyed from the world. Other than the top experts who had survived from that era, no cultivator or monster would have the slightest respect for the ancient demon court. However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas clearly did not belong to those ignorant people. They knew how powerful the ancient demon court was. Even if the other party had disappeared for countless years, They would try their best to satisfy some of Lin Yuan's requests instead of pretending to comply and secretly trying to extract benefits from Lin Yuan. It was precisely because they knew how powerful the ancient demon court was that they had high hopes for Lin Yuan, who was known as the reincarnation of the ancient demon emperor. They felt that Lin Yuan had really mastered the means to purify the dragon bloodline. Moreover, because of Lin Yuan's legendary battle achievements and monstrous advancement speed, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas firmly believed that Lin Yuan was from the demon court. Chapter 654. However, the ancient demon court had been dead for many years. Even if there were still remnants in the world, they were only peripheral members back then, or cultivators similar to the Heavenly Gate Guardians who had obtained the inheritance of the demon court cultivators. Whether it was humans or demonic beasts, there was only one attitude towards the ancient demon court that had been prosperous back then: keep quiet. Perhaps even the old monsters who had survived from that era did not know what had happened back then. Otherwise, they might not have been able to survive until now. Naturally, the major events that had happened back then were gradually forgotten. Even the ancient demon court had begun to be forgotten. The group of survivors back then also began to form their own forces. After a long period of development and reproduction, some were cut off, and some were strong. The experts of the older generation did not appear, and the new generation formed their own social circles. To be honest, the current cultivation forces were actually survivors of the ancient demon court. However, they had been divided into different forces, and no one called themselves the descendants of the ancient demon court. Until Lin Yuan, an anomaly, appeared. Many old monsters hidden in the depths of the world were shocked to discover that the ancient demon court might have never perished. However, even if the ancient demon court still existed, not many cultivators would take them seriously. After being isolated from the world for so many years, even if they were a ferocious tiger in the past, they should have rotted to the point that even their bones could not be found. In fact, this was indeed the case. This was because the only person who claimed to be the ancient demon court was Lin Yuan of unknown origins. This spokesperson of the demon court was now only a mountain lord. He was not even considered a top expert in the mortal world, let alone in the eyes of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. The decline of the demon court was obviously an indisputable fact. Therefore, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had set up some difficulties to force out Lin Yuan's trump card, or the hidden demon court elder behind Lin Yuan. However, Lin Yuan only killed a crab general and swaggered into the Dragon Palace. The methods that had been prepared beforehand were taken out individually to argue with an existence who could casually kill demonic beasts of the same level and leave them without a corpse. The only result was that the mainstays loyal to the Dragon Palace would continue to die until the Dragon Palace felt sorry for them and took the initiative to withdraw them. With that in mind, the Draconians removed all of their arrangements and chose to face Lin Yuan directly. But now it still didn't get any benefits from Lin Yuan. Not only did it destroy a treasure, but it also didn't get any valuable information from Lin Yuan. But to say that there were no gains was obviously not the case. At the very least, it could tell the dragon ancestors that Lin Yuan was really the spokesperson of the ancient demon court. This was because the terror of being caught between life and death was clearly not something that could be felt by just anyone. If it wanted to, it could destroy the West Sea Dragon Palace with a single thought. Unless the dragon ancestors stepped in, there was no way they could fight it. Such a threat definitely did not come from a flood dragon at the Mountain Lord level. Thus, there was only one possibility. Lin Yuan had not come south alone. At the very least, there was an expert of the ancient Fey court hiding by his side. The Draconians didn't hide their surprise at all. Lin Yuan could tell what they were thinking at a glance. However, this was very normal. With a top faction like the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas behind it, it had a few true dragons supporting it, and it also had a treasure that could make people involuntarily speak the truth. No matter what identity this Draconians had, it was certain that this fellow was a flower that had not experienced much. Perhaps it had a lot of experience and a high cultivation level, but it didn't mean that it was shrewd. After all, the growth of any creature was based on some kind of painful lesson, and such a lesson obviously wouldn't appear in the upper echelons of a top faction like this. After all, the other top factions wouldn't be so bored as to become enemies with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and those who coveted the heritage of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas weren't strong enough to threaten them. Such an environment undoubtedly formed a sick cycle. Unless the dragon race of the Four Seas fell one day, or the world was in chaos to the point where it could threaten the existence of the dragon race, these members of the dragon race would quickly give birth to a group of independent existences, after paying a painful price. What if such a person couldn't be born? The dragon race of the Four Seas would be destroyed from then on. A flower of fortune and an unorthodox person like Lin Yuan were obviously not on the same level, at least in terms of acting skills. Lin Yuan could tell what the Draconians were thinking from their expressions, eyes, tone, and small actions. He could deduce if something he said had affected this Draconians with a high cultivation level. However, on the other hand, the Draconians could only see indifference and ridicule on Lin Yuan's face. There were no factors that would expose Lin Yuan's true thoughts. Phew, the Draconians let out a deep breath and said with a cold gaze, "Black Jiao, I have to say that we underestimated the ancient demon court. However, this doesn't mean that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is really afraid of the ancient demon court. No matter how many terrifying existences are hiding behind you, they are in fact people who can't see the light of day. Otherwise, they would have jumped out long ago. How would the guardian of the heavenly gate have the chance to dominate the Tianwu continent?" At this point, Lin Yuan showed a surprised and dignified expression quite cooperatively. Ancient demon court? What did the ancient demon court have to do with him? A force formed by a group of refugees from the Great Wastelands might be extremely powerful in the eyes of the natives of the Tianwu continent, but in Lin Yuan's eyes, they were just a group of cowards who couldn't do anything. Even if they had some tricks up their sleeves, it was impossible for them to fight against Hongjun. As long as there were one or two people who were qualified to carry the flag, the Tianwu continent would still be under the rule of the demon court. But in reality, when Hongjuan's vanguard army arrived, the ancient demon court was quickly annihilated. They either died or left, completely disappearing without a trace. The natives of the Tianwu continent could withstand the attacks of Hongjuan's minions. Could it be that the ancient demon court, which had given them cultivation techniques and suppressed all the natives until they couldn't breathe, couldn't withstand it? It wasn't that they couldn't withstand it, but they had been scared by Hongjun and no longer had the courage to face Hongjun. Therefore, to Lin Yuan, a group of cowards was a tiger's skin at the right time to scare the natives of the Tianwu continent. When it wasn't the right time, even if the big shots of the ancient demon court returned, they would have to obediently stand by the side and watch his performance. They definitely wouldn't have the chance to criticize him. If he couldn't even deal with the defeated person who was beaten into a stray dog by Hongjun, how could he talk about facing Hongjun? Seeing Lin Yuan's expression, the Dragon Man believed that he had grasped Lin Yuan's weakness. He smiled and said, "However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was born from the ancient demon court. We still admit this. In a sense, we are family, aren't we?" Chapter 655. Following the Dragonoid's sudden change of topic, Lin Yuan's face also revealed a puzzled expression. But this time it was not an act. He was really stunned. Was this fellow trying to rope him in? How big of a heart did he have to think that after a series of unpleasantness, they would still be able to sit down and cooperate peacefully? Furthermore, it was only after the other party raised a stupid question, and sensed the threat of the system that they agreed to cooperate? Lin Yuan did not know how to evaluate this dragonoid's actions. Its cultivation and status were not low, so its intelligence should not be too big of a problem. Therefore, this fellow's EQ was probably not too good. Perhaps it was considered to have a high EQ among the Four Seas dragon race, but in front of ordinary demonic beasts or humans, its actions should be considered to be confusing, right? Therefore, I feel that we can cooperate. The dragonoid sat on the coral throne, crossed its arms and smiled. Ning Tianxing is a member of our dragon race. The news about you has already been reported to me, so I feel that you should know that we have placed some spies in the human territories to control them. But you should know the current situation of the demonic beasts, so we can only secretly control a portion of the territories. Even if we want to give back to the Dragon Palace, we can only do it through transactions. Not to mention the low efficiency, there are also some transactions that are prohibited, so the dragonoid looked like it wanted to say something but stopped. It did not state its intentions, because it felt that Lin Yuan should understand its intentions. In fact, Lin Yuan did understand the dragonoid's intentions. It wanted to use the name of the northern frontier to control the Azure River Empire, and even more human territories. Looking at the entire Tianwu continent, humans and demonic beasts were in a situation where they would not rest until one of them was dead. Only Lin Yuan, an anomaly, had used the Demonic Emperors Association to establish a firm foundation for him to rule over the human territories. At least on the surface, no one could find fault with Lin Yuan. The king of the northern frontier was Li Zhong, who was deeply loved by the people of the northern frontier, while Lin Yuan was just a wild god conferred by the Xinwu dynasty. It did not matter what the relationship between Li Zhong and Lin Yuan was. After all, Lin Yuan had the tiger skin of the ancient demon court and the Hengduan mountains behind him. Moreover, he was a dragon bloodline demon beast. Whether it was on the surface or in the dark, Lin Yuan was a very difficult existence to deal with. Therefore, no dynasty or top force would be so free as to fight Lin Yuan to the death. What they needed was just a fig leaf to deceive those ignorant ordinary people, to show that the northern frontier, and even the entire northern territory of the Xinwu dynasty, were still under the control of human beings. As long as Lin Yuan did not announce that he was the ruler of the northern frontier, the various forces would not fall out with Lin Yuan, even if they knew that the situation was gradually getting out of control. After all, no one was willing to be the first to stand out and cause both sides to suffer or even perish together. You want to use the name of the Demonic Emperors Association? Lin Yuan frowned slightly and said decisively, "Someone has told me about this before, but I'm sorry, no force will allow a force similar to the Demonic Emperors Association to rise. Even the Demonic Emperors Association in the northern frontier cannot infiltrate other regions. Otherwise, it will attract the crazy attacks of countless cultivators, because no one wants to become the next Xinwu dynasty." The Dragon Man still did not hide the change in his expression and said in a deep voice, "You may have misunderstood me. I have no intention of letting the northern frontier take action. Our Dragon Palace has already launched an all-out plan against the Qinjiang dynasty. As long as there is a suitable reason, we can wipe out the Qinjiang dynasty's royal family at any time. We have even placed some people in the victorious army. Together with the demon beasts of Wei River, Yin River, and the coast, we can instantly defeat all the troops of the Qinjiang dynasty loyal to the royal family. Therefore, I only hope that the northern frontier can cooperate with us." "Impossible." Lin Yuan shook his head lightly and said expressionlessly, "The consequence of doing so is that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will take over all the territory of the Qinjiang dynasty. Then the northern frontier will bear the infamy and the consequences. They might even cross the Hengduan mountain range at all costs and directly backstab our northern frontier. I don't want to bear this loss, and I can't bear it." Because he knew the consequences of doing so, Lin Yuan rejected them very straightforwardly. Even Lin Yuan dared to think about it, but did not dare to do it. Now the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wanted to bribe him? He was able to take over the northern frontier because there was a problem with everyone's information. In addition to the internal conflicts of the Xinwu dynasty, he was able to succeed. After that, taking over the Xinwu dynasty's northern territory was something that Lei Qiuxing tacitly agreed to. As long as he did not offend the public, no one would say anything about Lin Yuan taking over such a territory. Moreover, Lin Yuan even used his tiger skin to share the cake with those top forces. However, after the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas took over the Qinjiang dynasty, things took a turn for the worse. Firstly, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas said that they did not want to contribute to the northern frontier. In fact, they were worried that the northern frontier would take the opportunity to take over the territory. Therefore, after the matter was settled, Lin Yuan would definitely not get a share of the benefits. However, the Demon Emperor Association was the one who took over the Qinjiang dynasty in name. Even if he wanted to use benefits to shut the mouths of the top forces, he could not do anything. After all, Lin Yuan only took over 1/5 of the Xinwu dynasty's territory. The northern territory had not even resumed production. Even if he was very resourceful, It was impossible for him to use such a piece of land. He even took out the benefits that should be given after taking over the Qingjiang dynasty. Even if he could take it out, what right did he have to pay for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Moreover, Lin Yuan wanted to take over the Tianwu continent and not occupy the northern part of the Shenwu dynasty. He had to plan slowly and slowly take over the territories that he fancied and share the cake with the top forces. At the very least, he had to do this before he was strong enough. Furthermore, other than the top forces, he also had to take care of the reputation of the various empires. Otherwise, even if the top forces agreed to it tacitly, the empires would not sit by and watch Lin Yuan grow stronger. They would definitely join forces to attack the northern frontier. Lin Yuan was not naive enough to think that the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range would really start an all-out war with the few empires. If they really fought, even the demonic beast imperial court might not be able to protect him, not to mention sending troops to reinforce the northern frontier. Once the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas took action, in addition to the Sky Demon's chaos, they would be in a situation where they would be attacked from both sides. Even Lin Yuan could only obediently wait for death. So there's no room for discussion? After being rejected by Lin Yuan consecutively, the Dragonman's gaze turned dangerous. Both parties looked at each other for a moment. The Dragon Man was so angry that he laughed and said coldly, "Black Jiao, you have to know that I am not negotiating with you. I am ordering you to do this in the name of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. As a member of the dragon race, you should understand that the strength of the dragon race is your strength. Are you sure you want to put your personal benefits above the dragon race's benefits?" You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.